Watch it!
On 93.5
Watch it!
and 107.5.
Boom, baby!
The Fan.
Halle freaking Luya.
You're not kidding.
It is here, Draft Day 2023. Good Thursday morning to you. Kevin Bowen, Jake Query, and Mark Dykton. It looks like a pretty nice spring afternoon. The camera wasn't on?
Your camera's not working.
Well, now,
Jake already.
now that I'm looking at it, it's kind of
hold on.
doused in mayo a little bit from yesterday.
Let me just interject here to say this. On this program, we have two people. One of which, that would be me, via branding, whatever you want to call it. I think if there was one area that people would say, like, what does Jake cover more than anything else, whatever, it'd probably be like the Indy 500. For Kevin, it would be the NFL draft. Like, as a matter of fact, yesterday one of the TV stations reached out to me to try to get a hold of Kevin to talk about the NFL draft. Like, that is, Kevin Bowen is the guy that probably knows more about the NFL draft than anyone in this town. So how perfect would it be on draft morning that his camera doesn't work?
Mm-hmm. Little mayo residue I'm seeing around the camera lens here.
It was the plop.
Yeah, on this Thursday morning.
Joey already has turned off his radio.
We'll have Matt Taylor on at 8:30, Zak Keefer at 9 o'clock. And we'll also play some audio from Kansas City. The quarterbacks are already there for the draft. And some interesting comments, Indy-related, from, I would say, each of the three. I think we can kind of isolate Bryce Young into Frank Reich in Carolina now, but we'll play. Well, yeah, I guess we'll find out for good in about 13 hours. But I find it very fitting that amidst the Indy 500 decorations in this studio, it looks like a really nice spring morning here in Indy. And Jake, I'll probably say this several times throughout the show today, but I think this is a day that Colts fans should look at and be excited. It's an injection of life. It's some hope. And at the most important position in sports, you're going to take a guy that, for the first time in, I would say, quite a while, is not, like, depreciating, if you will. You don't have a deteriorating asset at quarterback. You have a guy that potentially could help you change the shape of the franchise right now, which has not been going in a good path here in recent seasons. And basically, you're going to try and go down the path that you have to go down if you want to be good for whatever, 5 to 7, in all hope, 10 years.
That's certainly the hope. No doubt about that. The big question, of course, being, which way is it going to go? Because that's the fascinating thing about the quarterback position, Kevin. There is no guarantee, no matter how high up you take them. You know, we have seen drafts in the past where there have been, 4 or 5 quarterbacks that were a big quarterback class, and you're thinking, okay, which one's it going to be? And oftentimes one of them hits, a couple of them are okay, and then one is a disaster. So you've got to hope that the law of averages is on your side, and that's the real thing to watch here. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a quarterback. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But which one's it going to be? And thank goodness tomorrow we'll have the answer.
Yeah, and again, there are no guarantees, to your point. You got a lot of work to do after making the selection of the draft pick. But in my mind, finally, the Colts are going to try to go down the right path. And the right path is drafting a quarterback, molding that quarterback, building a team with that quarterback on a cheap-ish rookie deal, and then seeing if you can have some sort of, again, 5 to 10 year level of sustained success. I think as a fan, I don't want to speak for everybody, but as a fan of a professional sports franchise, I think what you're trying to get, Jake, is you're trying to get some sort of decade-long run to where you feel like on an annual basis you've got a legit shot. And you got to go back to, 2018, since Colts fans have felt that?
Yeah.
And even then, you still had the elephant in the room of Andrew Luck's injuries.
But, Kevin, I certainly hope that no one is under the anticipation, and I think there are a lot of people that will be, understandably, but I hope that people are not under the expectation, and maybe this does become the case. We shall see. But I hope people are not expecting that this is an immediate answer.
No. I want to make it clear I'm not saying that.
Well, I don't mean you, but I think there are people that probably think that, right?
would hope that's a very small minority.
I mean, is it possible that whoever they draft sits behind Gardner Minshew for the year?
Certainly, yeah. And, obviously you'll see how that rookie assimilates to Shane Steichen and the NFL in general. When you throw him into the fire, all of those things will be storylines to watch. And, you've seen, if you look at the past probably 5 or 6 Super Bowls, you'll see several Super Bowl teams with rookie contract quarterbacks. So it doesn't happen in year one, but at some point, it is possible to get here. And as beautiful as this morning is, there's nothing more beautiful than playing the AFC South. And if you look at all the other divisions in the AFC, none of them are as easy as what it looks like here. So I know Jacksonville, of course, is in a much different state than they were in this time last year, but Houston and Tennessee, I think their markets look at Indianapolis in a pretty similar light.
You know what, Kevin, the Colts should hope for? And this is a very rare trait. And it's a trait that I don't know that you even know that you have it until it unfolds in front of you. I don't know that you can predict it. The Colts need to hope that whoever they draft, whether it be quarterback, whatever position it might be, somewhere in the draft, has the mentality, the gamesmanship, the dog in them like Jimmy Butler. That guy, the Miami Heat, I think Eric Spoelstra can just flat out coach, and they're healthy now and they're dangerous. But when you have a guy like Jimmy Butler that you can basically just say, let's go. Like, we will ride you and just get on your back and let's just go. And he's like, okay, cool. He's not a guy that, he's not Dylan Brooks out there talking all the time. He's not the kind of guy that's like, I'll be there, you watch, I guarantee we won't be coming back. We're going to close out what he just goes out and plays. And that guy just finds buckets, man.
Competitor, absolute competitor, intensity. And last night he did it again back in his college hometown. The Heat upset the Bucks in one of the more special fourth quarters you'll ever see. Miami down 16 in the fourth quarter. They set an NBA record for the biggest comeback in a fourth quarter to clinch a series. How about an 8 seed winning a series 4-1?
Yeah, I mean, and again,
and Giannis played in two of the. I mean,
he did
the last two games, and in game one, the Heat were up 10 when Giannis exited. So who knows how that game would have unfolded the rest of the way, but. I don't want this to be like, Giannis was banged up and it would have been a totally different series. Miami, again, won 2, maybe 2.5 games if you want to go there with Giannis in the lineup. Jimmy Butler makes this off-balance, falling away shot pretty much at the buzzer to force the game into overtime. Then they win the game in OT, 42 for him. Bam Adebayo with 20, 10, and 10. And now channel your Jeff Van Gundy, Pat Riley days. We've got the Heat and the Knicks in an Eastern Conference semifinals.
How about that, man? All we need is Jeff Van Gundy just hanging onto the leg of
Mourning, right?
I think it was Alonzo Mourning, yeah. I think that's right.
Picturing Oakley and Vashawn Leonard getting into it at one. Tim Hardaway maybe getting into it.
Are our Sacramento Kings done?
Oh, man.
Beautiful opportunity last night in a critical Game 5, and now they're down 3-2.
And, I mean, this was to be expected, and, kudos to him for even trying to play. But you look at De'Aaron Fox, 9 of 25, 6 turnovers. When they have won games in this series, and even when they lost, Fox has been absolutely incredible. He plays through the finger injury. Obviously not a very efficient night. That series now goes back to Golden State for Game 6, where the Warriors have been... I think 14 of 15 they've won there at home. So I think when Sacramento looks back on this series, they'll point to Game 3 and Game 4. Because how about Draymond last night? I mean, Dylan Brooks continues to be no-shows even when the Grizzlies win. But Draymond Green, 21 off the bench.
Yeah, the only time he's a no-show is when he's not allowed to show up, right?
Pretty much.
You get out of here, sir.
So we finally have a road win in that Warriors series. They go up 3-2. Again, the Knicks close out the Cavs. I mean, the Knicks just really controlled that series. I don't think for 1 second you ever felt like, oh, yeah, Cleveland's going to win this series.
Right.
Jalen Brunson, a lot of balance last night for them. The trade of Josh Hart. I know in this market, it's not really like, are the Knicks likable? But, I mean, I kind of enjoy Jalen Brunson.
The Knicks are very likable in every way, shape, and form, excluding the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Dolan is like the Daniel Snyder of the NBA.
That'd be like the Commanders making a run with a likable quarterback or something along.
But I mean, the Garden.
lines.
Have you been to the Garden?
No, it's on the bucket list.
I mean, there's just something about it, man. You take the train into the Garden, and I mean, it's like being a kid again.
And I love seeing how passionate that their fan base is. Just their second series win since 2000. So we have two semifinal matchups. We've got the Nuggets and the Suns out west, and then in the East, we'll have either the Heat or the Knicks playing for the Eastern Conference Finals. Tonight, it'll be Celtics and Hawks. That is a Game 6 in Atlanta. And then we will get to a Game 6 with Golden State in Sacramento out west. That will be a Friday, 8 o'clock tip. The Lakers trying to close it out on their home floor against the Grizzlies will happen at 10:30 on Friday night. So just one game tonight. That'll be 8:30, Celtics and Hawks.
If the Hawks advance, I mean, they're not going to, but if the Hawks upset the Celtics, I feel like we need a Hawks sound effect.
Oh, I'm sure I have one of those from the March Madness.
Ask and you shall receive.
Well, what team in March Madness was there a Hawks?
I think there's like a
St. Joe mascot.
Were the Hawkeyes there? I don't remember.
The Hawkeyes were probably there, yeah. St. Joe's, they're the Hawks, but they were
Iowa
in it,
typically doesn't make it very long, though. The Hawkeye doesn't stay in the air very long.
That is true.
Oh,
actually,
beautiful, Mark.
The Iowa Hawkeyes are kind of the Atlanta Hawks of college basketball, right?
Yeah, I think that's
by the time you realize what's going on.
Hey, what's coming from that hawk? Oh, gross.
Okay. Speaking of the
Gotta
Hawkeyes,
change my shirt now.
Xavier Johnson, Jake, back to Indiana. The medical waiver that IU mentioned really back, I guess, late February when they made the announcement that Xavier Johnson would not play the rest of the season. That goes through, so that's year 6, right, for him in college basketball?
Yeah.
So he will play for a 6th season in Bloomington. The volatility of Xavier Johnson speaks for itself, but boy, does Indiana just need somewhat of a proven, ball handler, don't give the ball to a freshman for 38 minutes a night sort of feel. Much needed for Indiana, and at the same time, they still need to be very hungry in the portal.
Well, at this point, doesn't the portal feel like you'd be getting kind of the pick through leftovers? I hate to say it that way, but
I was thinking about it, though. I think where they could potentially, it's not going to be a big pool of candidates, but they could potentially get some portal additions. You see, I don't know the amount of guys that do this, but there are a decent amount of players that declare for the NBA draft while also announcing that if I come back to school, I'm in the transfer portal. So do you get guys that have entered the draft, end up withdrawing from the draft, don't want to go back to the school that they were at, so now they're in the portal? I know that's probably not a ton, but I think that is a pool of a little bit, hopefully for Indiana's sake, like better talented players you can try and go after.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
Maybe
think
it's a stretch.
No, that's fair. If you look at Indiana's roster and you look at the departures, the outgo and the income. I mean, you lose Trace Jackson Davis. You lose Race Thompson. You lose Jalen Hood-Schifino. Who else am I missing here?
Kopp.
You lose Miller Kopp. You lose Geronimo, right?
Yeah. 61 of the 69 points against Miami. Some would argue how big of a loss maybe a Tamar Bates would be, but
and Tamar Bates, who's now at Missouri.
Yeah, Galloway and Renew were the two that played in that game that are returning.
So of those, you're talking about, and again, not just because of transfers. Don't get me wrong, but you're talking about 6 pieces, 5 of which were pretty significant over the course of the year. All 6 of them at some point were significant. You are replacing them with a guy that was giving you 16 minutes and 6 points a game for a double-digit loss team and a 6th-year returning player who is a dynamic offensive player but also somewhat unpredictable and at times can shoot you out of games. And that's it. That's the only 2 pieces you have really incoming. And then obviously recruits. And
you're going to need some in-roster development. CJ Gunn, Caleb Banks, these are guys that you have got to see take jumps.
And Malik Renew as well, right?
Sure.
I mean, he showed flashes.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, he looked like he
Renew
was
you
starting
feel
to
better
show.
about.
Right.
Banks and Gunn just, based off minutes, didn't get, anywhere near that amount of look as a freshman.
But it beats the alternative. Don't get me wrong. Getting Xavier Johnson back, it beats finding out that he's not going to be available because it is consistent and reliable scoring.
Yeah.
Reliable maybe is, but you have a pretty good idea what you're getting.
Yeah, when he is on, he's an all-conference type of guard for you without question. You don't make the tournament without him, back a couple of seasons ago. But if you just look at his sample size from when he played this year, Jake, he was great against Xavier. Huge road win for Indiana. Easily one of their best wins of the season. And then you look at Rutgers and Arizona, and he was awful. And that's just kind of the Xavier Johnson experience to a degree. And now you are going to put much more on his plate. It's not going to be Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson and Miller Kopp. He is going to be the lead guy. Every late clock experience is going to be in Xavier Johnson's hands. And that, to me, would have Dr. Mottman on line 1 for me.
Fair enough. Dr. Mottman running the mini with me, by the way, a week from Saturday.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Now, the Lions are going where tonight? Are they going defense?
Boy.
Are they going quarterback?
They can go anywhere, right? Where are the Lions? Where are they drafting?
Seattle at 5, Detroit at 6. Do either of them take a QB? Do they look at the Geno Smith, Jared Goff and say, boy, behind a closed door, we have some honest opinions about...
Seattle would be the one in particular, because how old is Geno Smith? I know they just signed into a bigger deal, but...
Mark, will you look that up? 32 would be my guess for Geno. I think a lot of the guarantees are kind of
Jared
early.
Goff, 30?
In that Goff and Wentz were the same draft, right? I'd say Goff's a little younger. Probably 28, something around there.
Geno Smith is 32, and Jared Goff...
If he's 28, I'll be impressed here that Kevin went 2 for 2.
Yeah, this was probably... Maddie's going to be like, will you ever pay attention to me?
When's my birthday, Kevin? Jared Goff is 28.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
I would ask...
Such a nerd.
I would ask Jake for my birthday, but Mark, we know where that's going to go. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, born in 1982. Kevin,
born in 1978, yep. So...
on that end. Again, Matt Taylor going to join us at 8:30. 9 o'clock, it will be Zak Keefer. I tweeted out last night, Jake, just a few things I want to see out of the Colts here in this draft. Obviously, the first one speaks for itself. Finally, time to take a QB swing. You owe it to your organization. I'm not holding my breath for this one. Shane Steichen should be the biggest QB decision maker in that room. Should be. Again, not holding my breath necessarily, but he should be. I've mentioned it a few times this week. I think late tonight, if that board starts to fall in a particular way, you don't close the door on trading back into round 1 for a premium position. I'm tired of hearing about roster depth. Tired of it. You need more high-end talent on your roster. So premium position, if a guy falls, go there. And then lastly, I just think other positions of need, non-quarterback, throwing a speedy wideout, throwing a couple corners, need a linebacker at some point, and then some offensive linemen as well.
I have a question about Shane Steichen that I'll ask you coming up in about 15 minutes. Because there's one thing with Shane Steichen that I was thinking about yesterday, not a knock on him at all, but I wonder how much of a factor it could be in the decision-making process tonight. The Colts will draft at approximately what time, Kevin?
So 8 o'clock is when things get underway. Goodell usually does some song and dance where he's eating barbecue on stage in Kansas City. Carolina will go on the clock at like
taking all the
8:12.
booze. Give me all the booze.
That's BOOS.
Yeah.
He's not drinking.
They're not saying boo. They're saying boo earns.
Well, that one year he was in his basement, eating M&Ms during the COVID draft.
Oh, yeah.
I would guess 8:40-ish. 10 minutes per pick, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got 4 to go. Or they would be the fourth pick. Yeah, I would say right around 8:40 for the Colts. Again, picks in rounds 1 and 2 their own. They have Washington's pick in the middle of round 3. They have their own pick in 4. They have 3 picks in round 5. None in 6. 2 and 7. I know our audience might have missed it because it was the end of the show yesterday, and maybe they were just mayoed out, frankly, at that point.
So I was.
Did you guys find it interesting at all, how bullish John McClain covers the Texans, has done over 4 decades, covered the Houston franchise, that he thinks Will Levis at number 2?
He certainly thinks quarterback. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a domino that we've talked about of, okay, what will Houston do at 2 and the ramifications for the Colts at 4.
And he was adamant, right?
Because everything we've heard is the Texans don't know what they're doing. They might skip, and he's like, no, they know what they're doing. Like he was kind of like the steady ship in the.
He basically
waves.
said, look, the Houston Texans know what they're doing. Just because the guys and gals who are paid to cover them don't know what they're doing doesn't mean the Texans don't. That's basically what he said, right?
Yeah, I found that interesting. Obviously, under that scenario, that would take Bryce Young and Will Levis off the board at 1 and 2, and then number 3. I'd be curious what type of calls Arizona would be fielding for CJ Stroud interest, or I guess Anthony Richardson interest. Because at that point, 2 QBs are off, 2 are left, and the Colts could be just having one given to them, but not necessarily being able to pick from one of the 2. So that's a scenario we can get into.
Do you think before the draft coverage starts, we'll have word that there's been a draft day trade for number 3?
Well, it's a great question, Mark. I would say no. Unless it kind of leaks what Houston is doing. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the team that's trading up knows exactly what it would look like at 3. I found it wild, and Todd McShay tweeted this earlier in the week. There has not been a draft day trade within the top 10 in the last 4 years. So we've gotten to this Thursday night, and the picks in the single digits have gone as they are right now. Obviously, last year the big trade was, middle of round 1? That was the A.J. Brown trade?
That really worked out well for the Titans, didn't it?
Yeah, you want to talk about a trade that is a clear winner? I think the Eagles got that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
We will get you caught up on what happened last night in the world of sports on the other side. And then coming up, some interesting comments from not 1, not 2, but 3 potential draft picks for the Colts tonight, and a couple more questions looking deeper into it. Again, Matt Taylor at 8:30, Zak Keefer 9 o'clock hour on a day that is supposed to be overcast later today, but for right now, you are hoping that the Colts draft looks more like right now than what the day is going to look like around noon or so, because I think it's going to be a little more overcast. But bright and sunny here at 20 after 7, 23 after 7 on a Thursday morning. Good morning to you. It is Kevin and Corey, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
There were 4 games in the association last night, none of them more exciting than Miami and Milwaukee, as the Heat were trying to eliminate the Bucks. They were down 16 late, and then Jimmy Butler, amongst others, did Jimmy Butler things, hitting a key basket late that allowed Miami to get into overtime, where they defeated Milwaukee 128-126. Here's how it sounded with one of Jimmy Butler's heroics.
Over the top to Butler. Up and in! Jimmy Butler ties the game with a half second to go. What a play call. Milwaukee had a timeout and did.
That was from NBA TV. So the Heat go on to win 128-126. Butler had 42. Gabe Vincent, 22. Bam Adebayo, 20 points, 10 boards, 10 assists. Kevin Love, 15 points, 13 boards. That's what Miami does, is they just have these pieces that come at you, and the way Eric Spoelstra draws things up, different players arise game in, game out. Giannis, the question for Giannis last night after a 38-point, 20-rebound performance. Sure, he's gotten a ring in Milwaukee, but this year getting bounced by an 8 seed. Giannis, does that mean that technically this year was a failure?
Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get a promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure? That's what you're telling me? No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, exactly. So why are you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports.
Yeah, boy, that's a lot there. I don't know if failure is too harsh for Giannis. How can it not be viewed as anything other than utter disappointment? Has a one seed ever lost 4-1?
He was asked the question because that's a great answer, but you don't get that great answer without the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't mind the question at all. Again, Milwaukee loses as the 1 seed, 4-1. The Heat will take on the Knicks in an Eastern Conference semifinal. Out west last night, you had the Grizzlies keep their season alive. They are down 3-2 now. Game 6 will be Friday. The other Game 6 on Friday will be the Warriors and the Kings. For the first time in that series, we saw a road team win. De'Aaron Fox had 25, but it took him a whole lot of shots, and he had 6 turnovers as he tried to play through that injury. So the Warriors up 3-2 with a chance to clinch on their home floor Friday. Tonight, just one game. Celtics and Hawks in Atlanta. Boston going for the clinch there.
Major League Baseball yesterday, a host of games to talk about, including the Giants.
I almost brought a broom in for the Reds.
7-3. How about the Reds? 5-3 over the Texas Rangers. That's a 3-game sweep. Does it count if it's against the Rangers?
They were actually kind of good coming into this series.
Yeah, with how much money the Rangers have spent, yeah, that's a pretty big upset.
Mark, the audio?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I have that readily
Don't
available.
look now. Here come the Red
There
Legs.
you go.
Thank you.
I usually have the other one ready because it's the Reds, so I just assume the worst.
Biased Cubs, man.
Oh,
Cubs
really?
lost.
Yeah, Cubs lost 5-3 to the Padres.
Yeah.
That's okay.
How are things going for the Cubbies?
And Mark, I know
Second
you love
place,
this.
3rd place in the NL Central.
How about the White Sox?
They are an absolute embarrassment right now.
24 innings without a run, 7-game losing streak.
Not only that, but they're finishing up with the Blue Jays. They're probably going to get swept by them. Then they have 4 games again against the Rays, and then the arch rival Twins come to town. So their season could get way worse before we get to May 5th.
Can we check in, by the way, on our PBR race?
Oh, let's.
I went to go. By the way, last night went to go see Hamilton.
Oh,
at
Sing
Murat.
along?
Walked in, and there were 2 signs when you walk into
Alexander shotgunning PBRs in the lobby.
PBRs what they sell. You walk in, and there was a huge electric sign of like a floating PBR can. Nothing says Hamilton and Broadway like PBR.
I would not have guessed that. My A's lost 11-3.
Okay. Meanwhile,
They have 20 losses.
cute fella
20.
6-2 winner over the Boston Red Sox.
It's not even the end of April, and they've lost 20.
Diamondbacks, you got to win up on JMV's Kansas City Royals.
Yep.
Right now, don't look, but here come the Orioles. Cute fella, 16-8. Unfortunately, they're in the same division as the Rays, so it puts them 3.5 back. But the Orioles at 16-8, your Arizona Diamondbacks leading their division at 14-12.
Gosh, me and JMV just need to bond together. The Royals are 6-19.
Yeah, and the A's are 5-20. Do you realize that the Royals and the A's combined have fewer losses than Cute Fella? How about that? Telling you.
Unbelievable.
Do I need to go out and buy myself another Cute Fella hat?
You might need to.
I've got my Las Vegas A's gear shipping here any day now. All right, when we come back, by the way, tonight, Game 4 for the Indy Fuel. If you're looking for something to do up at the Coliseum, they'll try to keep their season alive.
Here we go, guys. You ready? Let's go Fuel. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Indians, another day game today. I think a little bit of a earlier start than yesterday over at Victory Field. Some interesting audio from the quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. All of them spoke to the media yesterday in Kansas City ahead of tonight's draft. We'll play some clips from that. I'll tell you what, CJ Stroud, if nothing else, he knows his Colts personnel. We'll talk about that next here on Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5. The Fan.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
A little over 8 hours. A little over 12 hours. 8 o'clock Eastern time. Tonight, that's when the draft will get underway. 8:40-ish, my guess on when the Colts will be on the clock with the number 4 overall pick. Right now, the quarterbacks, all of them will be in the green room tonight. The Kansas City's where the draft is. Yesterday, several of them made the media rounds. Some interesting comments. Anthony Calhoun from Wish TV was out in Kansas City. I believe is out in Kansas City. Caught up with several of them. Mark, let's play that CJ Stroud clip first. Obviously, CJ Stroud, a lot of questions yesterday related to, S2 tests, this and that. Calhoun
for those unfamiliar, Kevin, in the S2 test is the latest, end-all be-all test that is done not over intellect per se, but over reaction time and processing time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I believe so. I mean, there's different segments to the test. I think there's 6 or 7 parts to it. And Stroud, as you would understand, try to downplay, that yesterday and basically said, watch me on the field. You're going to see a pretty good processor, things like that. The Stroud comments yesterday with Anthony Calhoun, more Indy and Colts related. And CJ Stroud certainly knows his Colts staff. Here was CJ Stroud yesterday with Anthony Calhoun.
It went very well. Coach Steichen is a great coach, great man. I had a great time with Cam Turner, the quarterback coach, and Chris Ballard, the GM, who's amazing, man. Checks up on me, makes sure I'm straight. So, really, I think it went very well. My guy, DC, in player development, he's a great man. He's played it well with the coach and the Titans. So me and him had an amazing conversation about just mental stuff, and I think that whole staff is very, very good.
Well, we know you know about Indy. Many times Ohio State's there for the Big Ten championship. But that being said, for the folks back in Indianapolis, what kind of player can they expect from you if you do land in Indy?
Yeah, somebody who's going to work their tail off, man, to get to their bowl, just like Peyton Manning did a couple years prior. So I'm trying to bring in that same type of work ethic, that same type of grind, the same type of mindset, and that's something that I think I bring a winner's mindset coming from a winning program, and just being myself. I think that's all I can bring, being a man of God, being a hell of a football player, and being a great man in the community, which I plan to do.
CJ Stroud yesterday with Wish TV. When he said get to the bowl, do you think he meant the Mayo Bowl?
I was going to say, I've never heard the Super Bowl referred to as the bowl.
I know. That's probably smart on him. He's getting ahead of, I'm not allowed to say Super Bowl for commercial reasons on air. Certainly, the Colts have done their homework on CJ Stroud. I mean, that's clear based off that segment right there. The fact that, he sat down with Cam Turner, their quarterback's coach. David Thornton was the director of player personnel. I assume he was referencing there. Someone that the Colts think very highly of. Think of it more of kind of a, hey, get to know him a little bit more on a personal level away from the football field. Obviously, Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. I don't know, Jake. Any thoughts on?
Can you say that you're a man of God and a hell of a player in the same statement? Is that contradictory at all?
Oh, boy, that's probably for a different show.
Listen, I think there's no secret about the fact that, to me, if CJ Stroud is on the board, that's who you run to take. To me,
would they run to take him?
I think so.
What if you're a man of God, you're a hell of a player, and you throw a Hail Mary? That's a trifecta right there.
Hallelujah.
That's the tiebreaker, right?
Yeah.
The Holy Trinity? Is that what that is?
That's the tiebreaker. Yeah. Do you know who invented the Hail Mary, by the way, the term?
No.
Roger Staubach.
I did know that, yeah.
Roger Staubach. I believe to Drew Pearson. He said, I just threw it up and said a Hail Mary. I love C.J. Stroud's game. I think that he is, honestly, I think he's the guy that's the most ready to plug in and play. And I think he's got size. I think he's got mobility. And again, I think it's a very appropriate question to ask whether or not his ability at Ohio State put him at a disadvantage in the NFL, because now he is going to have to get used to throwing to receivers that are not 2.5 steps ahead of their competition all the time. That's the big question mark for sure.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier, before we hear from some of the other players, Kevin, let me begin by asking you this. You had mentioned that you thought Shane Steichen should have the most influence on which quarterback is selected for the obvious reasons, and I totally understand that. But allow me to ask you this. When you began this job, you had worked in, you had written some stuff. You had worked for the Colts. You got the opportunity here. You were writing on the website, and then you began doing essentially guest spots on different radio shows before essentially they gave you the opportunity to be a host on one of the main programs, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you now have been doing this in terms of being your name and the title of the show for over close to 2 years, right?
Yeah, July.
If our boss came to you today and said, "Hey, give us your viewpoints on how you want to approach the upcoming Colts season in terms of things we want to do on the air," would you say that you are more comfortable voicing your opinions about that now than you were 19 months ago?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Shane Steichen has been given the opportunity of a lifetime that he's never had before. Sean Payton can go into places right now and say, "I want this quarterback. This is who we're taking, guys. This is who I got to rally around." Pete Carroll could probably go right now and say, if Pete Carroll were to leave Seattle and then tomorrow Tampa hires him, he can go into Tampa and say, "I'm in charge of personnel here, guys. Here's what we're doing." Shane Steichen's been given the opportunity of a lifetime. He is a young guy who, for the very first time, is an NFL head coach. Quite frankly, Shane Steichen is, you 19 months ago, or me when I first started in my last radio job, whatever it might be. Well, for that matter, me here 19 months ago. You have a different mindset when you are brand new. The water temperature is as cold for Shane Steichen right now as it is for whatever quarterback they bring in. He is also in an acclimation period with his bosses, with the guys that signed his check, with the guys that gave him an opportunity. Does that, even if Shane Steichen is emphatic about one of these quarterbacks, does it in any way, shape, or form factor into the level of volume that he has in a meeting when he is talking to the guys that have given him this chance?
It's a totally understandable question, and I'd be foolish or very naive not to act like there isn't some of that at play. But what I would do to Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard is, and especially Irsay, just play back Jim Irsay's comments at the introductory press conference introducing Shane Steichen as the new head coach. When Jim Irsay goes on and on and on about the quarterback background of Shane Steichen and how beyond impressed he was when they met with him in Philadelphia, and Jim specifically met with him one-on-one in Philadelphia, and ask him, can you put your ego to the side to a degree and let him get the majority of the say? Again, I'm not naive to act like that's definitely going to happen, but I think if those two, Irsay and Ballard, were totally honest with themselves, Shane Steichen walking into the Colts head coach is a lot different than what my resume looked like walking into this job 2 Julys ago.
Right.
You hired him for a specific reason, and a big, big part of that was because the quarterback carousel has not worked out, and you have a top 5 pick, and you need to get that position right. So I think when you factor that in, you can look at it and say, you get the big chunk of this call.
Our friend Brian Kelly from the shop in Indy, who is a big Ohio State fan, does point out, by the way, Anthony is clearly forgetting that CJ Stroud actually has not played in a Big Ten title game in Indianapolis. It does feel like they're here every single year. The next quarterback that Anthony got a chance to talk to, that's right, the school up north, right? Will Levis of Kentucky. Also, Anthony caught up with him in Kansas City. Again, this is courtesy of Wish TV.
I asked you about Indianapolis and you getting ready to meet them. You had a smile on your face. How did it go? How did the meeting go with Chris Ballard?
It was great. We had a private workout and then we had a quick meeting beforehand. They gave us like a part of a playbook to like study and memorize, and I felt like did really well with that and made a good impression at the private workout, and then had the top 30 a couple weeks after that. And it was great. Connected with everyone in that organization, and was definitely one of my favorite visits I had.
Yeah. So for the folks back in Indy that are watching this, what can they expect from you if you are Indy bound?
You're going to get a hard worker. You're going to get someone who's going to just put their head down and grind for, the first period of time that I get there, and someone I feel like who's going to get into the locker room and just be a good dude for these guys, and just hopefully represent an organization in the best way possible with just who I am as a person as well. But an efficient player, a tough player, someone who can make all the throws, and we'll see. But I'm really looking forward to doing my job.
Just once, I want somebody to be like, "Oh man, you're going to get a guy that's just totally cashed in." Like I got the check. I'm picking up tabs in Broderpool and on Mass Ave, and
Isn't that kind of
see me on the golf course before you see me on the football field?
Isn't that kind of the story that like Ryan Leaf had to debunk this week? Like Polian said that Leaf told him, "If you draft me, I'm going to go to Vegas for a week. I got a party planned with my buddies." That's what Polian said, and Leaf totally had to be like, "That was not true."
Now. Well, Ryan Leaf, if you recall, is the one that didn't meet with the Colts. So that would in matter of fact, I remember the big story. Dave First was the one that had it. He was at the draft in New York, and Dave First was the one that had the scoop of Ryan Leaf skipped the meeting with Bill Polian. He was supposed to have a meeting with him and an interview, and he skipped it. So that actually would align with Ryan Leaf. My question on Will Levis, with what Ryan Leaf is saying there, I'm saying. My question about Will Levis is this, Kevin. What year was the year that Josh Rosen came out? Who were the other quarterbacks in that class?
Yeah, I think it was
that the Mayfield
Baker
class?
Went 1, Sam Darnold 3, Josh Allen, I think it was 7, and then Josh Rosen 10.
Josh Rosen in that draft was undoubtedly the cockiest quarterback of them coming in. He's the one that had the photo in the hot tub in his dorm, and every team's going to regret not taking me, and I'll be the best of this class. And I get, you have to have a self-belief for certain. I totally understand that. And you got to kind of pump yourself up. He was the 10th overall pick to Arizona. And then, of course, immediately Arizona, after a year, said, okay, we're going to move on. And they shipped him to Miami and took Kyler Murray. Will Levis is a guy that has been in the conversation for a while. He is not a Johnny-come-lately in terms of the quarterback conversation. Big arm, big junior year or previous year, and then the consistency maybe dipped a little bit. But I do have, if there's one area that I had to critique of him, and again, I'm going to stand by only because I've said it from the get-go and I believe in staying consistent. He is the one guy that I've been told or heard repeatedly the Colts have an interest in. Not to say they don't have interest in the others. But is he one that has the biggest potential, Kevin, for the diva mentality doing him in?
Yeah, I continue to kind of hear that, and I'm just a little bit like, I guess you can listen to comments and spin them whichever way you want to. I mean, it's a 15-minute podium session, but I listen to CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis, and those three in particular. If you wanted to, Jake, you could have walked away from all three of those podium sessions at the Combine, and you could have said, that's the cockiest dude I've ever heard. Or you could have said, man, that's exactly like Peyton Manning tell Bill Polian, if you don't draft me, I'm going to kick your ass for the next decade. Like, they all had confident, cocky comments. I mean, those comments from Levis right there that we just heard, I mean, those are fine, like, pretty subdued comments, in my opinion. So I guess I'm not, like, totally, seeing this like, oh, he's too cocky, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, when you sign contracts and commas and zeros are there and advertising and you're on billboards and sides of stadiums, how you handle all of that fame, we'll see what happens. But with Levis, I think it's more of on the field, the big sack numbers, the big turnover numbers. Do you feel like that was more of a product of the environment was just kind of wilting around him and he thought he had to do too much? Whereas his junior year, as you pointed out, Jake, when he had a little bit more talent around him, he had a very, very good season. So, yeah, I mean, you could spin Richardson's comments and say that he's cocky as hell. You could spin Stroud's comments and say he's cocky as hell. I think all three of them carry a pretty dominant personality, and that's, I think, the personality that wins a little bit more at quarterback than the other. That's how I kind of view Levis and really the other two as well. We'll get into Anthony Richardson when we come back again. Matt Taylor around 8:30. Zak Keefer going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. If I'm not mistaken, I think Zach did a trade-up in the athletics version of the mock draft. So we'll talk with Zach coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Really nice start to this Thursday here in Indianapolis. It is draft day with the Colts on the clock at number 4 overall tonight. Kevin and Corey, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It is the 8 o'clock hour in Indianapolis, and it is gorgeous outside. Jake Query along with Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton here as well. NFL Draft Day, a lot to talk about because the NBA playoffs last night were outstanding. Indiana finding out that Xavier Johnson will get another year of eligibility for Mike Woodson's Hoosiers last night. And then, of course, the draft upcoming today. That's been the focus of the conversation this morning. Kevin, one of the things to me that's interesting about the draft is there's always some drama that happens at the 11th hour, right? Remember the year that somebody got a hold of Laramie Tunsil's phone and, like...
How was that draft?
Started sending out... What were people doing? What was the reaction? For those that are unfamiliar, that was... the offensive lineman out of Ole Miss that was thought to be like a top 5 to 10 pick, and literally right as the draft got underway,
looked like a scene from Pineapple Express.
Yeah, he had a video was sent out of him wearing a gas mask as a bong, basically, and he fell. He didn't fall out of the first round, like mid-first round, right?
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in the teens, like early teens, and it's turned out to be a very good player, by the way. In the NFL. Yeah, I mean, there usually is that sort of storyline. I think when you've looked at some of these mocks, I want to say it was the ESPN one Stephen Holder was a part of yesterday. He had the debate of Richardson or Levis at 4. I think he took Richardson and Levis fell all the way to 19. Do we see that out of one of these 4? Some interesting over-unders. Hendon Hooker, draft over-under on where he's going to be selected. 31.5.
I'd go under.
So you say he goes earlier. He goes
a
little higher into round 1, obviously. Well, there's only 31 picks tonight, right? Did Miami had a forfeit?
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson over under 4.5. Is that Vegas saying, we think Indy and Seattle have a lot of interest in Anthony Richardson? Jalen Carter, at 1 point, some people thought maybe could be number 1 to Chicago. 6.5 for him. Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer, 24.5.
Where's Bijan Robinson?
That's a good one. I need to look that one up. What do you think, Mark? Middle round 1?
He's a fascinating
21.5.
That's the running back out of Texas, right?
Gosh, he is so talented.
That's the thing. I mean, he has Marshall Faulk-like potential, but is a guy like that get used in today's day as much? You know what I mean? I mean, what's the value of a guy like that?
12.5.
Wow. Well, the Eagles are there. They kind of got a luxury pick.
Yeah, they're at 10. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Joey Porter Jr. You guys remember that Purdue-Penn State game to open up the year? How good Joey Porter Jr. was in that game? He's at 19.5. Again, from a local angle, I don't think it'll happen tonight, but the 2 prospects to keep an eye on probably early tomorrow night, rounds 2 and 3. DeJuan Jones, the Ben Davis grad, who was over at Ohio State, the super big, long offensive tackle. And then Juju Brents out of Warren. He was at the Colts local pro day a couple weeks back. I remember walking into that indoor facility being like, wait, that dude plays corner? Huge. He could go, it sounds like, in the second round. Started his collegiate career at Iowa and then played at Kansas State here the last couple of years.
I was about to sneeze there. Sorry. The thing that I was going to say, Kevin, there's always some team that throws a monkey wrench in it or a curveball or surprisingly either trades out or moves up. I mean, sometimes it's Indianapolis. The Colts are not going to do that this year. But, Arizona is the wild card. Seattle also, for whatever reason, I think Seattle's intriguing because could Seattle drop back and try to parlay picks, but is Pete Carroll thinking long-term because who knows how long he's going to be there? You know what I mean? There are a lot of factors that come into play in that first round that'll be interesting to watch. But I do get the feeling, you're right, the law of averages based on precedent says that one of those 4 quarterbacks is going to be the one that for whatever reason slides, and then you find out after the fact something came out, there was something of concern. Levis, to me, there's been so much talk about Levis moving up so quickly and so recently here that it makes me wonder if that's not because teams are trying to bluff a top 3 drafting team or one that moves into the top 3 with Arizona if they're not trying to talk people into Levis so that they hope Richardson or Stroud is there for them.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's probably where a lot of the leak, whatever, smokescreen stuff comes from, of teams wanting other guys to fall. So they're going to try and, rip a guy or really boost another player that they potentially don't want. And that's what, April 27th and this entire month is largely about when you get closer to the draft. I do find it funny, Jake, and this is a little bit of like a draft tangent. You always hear the comment like, not all 4 of these quarterbacks are going to work out, and, why are there so many misses in round 1 of a draft with quarterback? Isn't it just simple, like, competition and parity? Not all 32 NFL teams can be good.
Right.
Like, they play each other on a weekly basis. So I always kind of laugh at, boy, I can't believe 4 guys are going to go in the top 4 or 5 picks. Not all 4 of them are going to be good. Well, of course not. But, you obviously have to have conviction on the guy that you are taking. That's just part of simple competition. Same thing with, head coaching hires in a cycle. We played some CJ Stroud audio and Will Levis audio last segment. Again, Anthony Calhoun out in Kansas City for the draft. Yesterday, he also caught up with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's comments made a little shorter than the other 2, but here was the Florida quarterback with Anthony Calhoun of Wish.
And I know you spent some time with the Colts as well. What was that meeting like with them, and what did you take away from that time in Indy?
Just trying to get to know those guys just in case they do draft me, just to get their ideas of what they're going to expect from me, and what I got to bring to the table.
Yeah, and I've been watching and I've been reading. I know you said you're going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. Take me through that and just who you are as a player for those folks back in Indianapolis in case you are Indy bound.
That's just my thought process throughout life. I want to be the best at everything I do. Whether that's I'm making a sandwich with my friends, I got to make the best sandwich. Or if I'm, driving, I got to park the best. I always want to be the best. So just stepping on the field, I feel like I am the best player at times. So, that's my thought process. I just want to be the best.
You think he puts mayo on a sandwich?
Come on, Mark.
Well, if it's making the best sandwich.
How quick was that by Mark? We didn't even plan that, Mark and I.
What if you're making the best sandwich and it's a turkey sandwich? You got to have mayo.
It was about this time yesterday, I think I took the 4th and last sip of the mayo coffee.
Well, you took
stuck
4?
with that longer than I did.
Hold on, you took 4?
4.
That thing curdled in the first sip.
Yeah. It felt like hail was hitting my lips, with some of the chunks that were staying in it.
No one recycled, right? All 3 of us clean sweep.
No, I did have one moment where I was like,
hey, last night, I almost texted you guys. Last night, so like I said, we went to Hamilton.
You think you're the only person in the crowd at Hamilton that put mayo in their coffee?
Yes. And also, by the way, I was the only person at Hamilton who had not seen it before. It was like being at Rocky Horror Picture Show. But
Alexander.
I mean, people are like chanting along and like, I'm like, wait, what's happening here? About midway through, all of a sudden, I got hit with this wave of like a PTSD recurrence where the smell and the taste just appeared right back into my senses, and it was horrific.
The theater nerds would have yelled at you. You interrupted our song because you barfed, sir. Sing it again, Alexander.
Something to note on the Richardson front. I remember Irsay. I think he was speaking about this kind of around the Eagles game, when Jalen Hurts ran in that touchdown against the Colts to win that game late. And obviously the Shane Steichen hire probably brought back up memories of that. But Irsay made a comment about the advantage you have with the dual threat quarterback, how you're able to play kind of 12 against 11. And that is a comment that I've come back to a little bit more because I think I've shared, Jake, throughout the past few months. I had definitely heard some Will Levis chatter for the Colts. My final mock I did this week, I went with Richardson. It's not an overwhelming conviction I have, but I there's a reason why I went with Richardson over Levis. I do think this is an interesting argument when I'm trying to picture what Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay, Shane Steichen could be thinking. Ballard has often said the phrase, don't point out what the guy can't do, show me what he can do. And if you're just debating Richardson and Levis, it might be a little steadier across the board with Levis, but Richardson has the dominant trait. And that, I think, is something that I've thought a little bit more and more about of, oftentimes we label, and we have labeled Richardson boom or bust, but his running trait probably gives him a pretty high floor. Now, of course, how long is that running trait there? He's 20 years old, 21 years old. Is that still going to be there at 28, 29? Is it still going to be that effective? That's a fine debate to have. But I do think that is a part of me where, as much as accuracy is spoken by Ballard and Steichen, I also can talk myself into some other comments about, again, don't show me what this guy can't do. Show me what he can do.
But
and he has a dominant trait, potentially more so than certainly Levis. I would say Stroud's got the accuracy trait. Bryce Young just poise, creator. But I think when you're comparing just Richardson to Levis, there is a clear kind of blue trait.
Isn't Ballard a big believer, though, in show me the tape?
Yeah.
Don't tell me what he can do. Don't tell me what he might do. Don't tell me what he's capable of. Show me what he's done.
We're going to get to tomorrow, Jake, and whether it's Richardson, Stroud, or Levis, there will be Ballard comments that you could probably talk yourself into any of those. And that's what makes this decision, or trying to predict this decision, I should say, very difficult. Not to mention, we don't know what's going to happen at 2, and we don't know what's going to happen at 3.
I mean, Levis isn't going number 1, right?
No, I mean, but by, seemingly everybody, it's Bryce Young.
Levis isn't going number 2, right?
John McClain said he was when we had him on yesterday. I mean, that would be like Mike Chappell coming on our show today and saying, whatever, this is the Colts pick. I mean, that's what John McClain said to us yesterday. And right. I thought, you guys were listening to the same interview I was. That was some pretty strong conviction, was it not?
It was. Now, so Stroud or Richardson?
What would I do, or what would they do?
What would they do?
I think Stroud, but I don't say that with as much confidence as what I would do, and I would run the Stroud card.
Here is a better question. Let's say, for the sake of Sports Talk Radio, let's say that CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, Kevin, are the 2 quarterbacks that the Colts have to choose from. Okay? Which one falls further if not taken by Indianapolis?
It's a good question. I would assume Richardson.
Okay, now, let's say that it comes down to Richardson and Levis. Which one falls further if not selected by Indianapolis?
Yeah, I would assume Levis. But again, we're talking about a guy that could go 2.
I know.
This is what... Just get us to Friday morning. Hell, get us to 9 o'clock tonight. JT, you wanted to talk draft?
Yep.
What's up, JT?
Good morning, guys. I've analyzed Ballard's mind over the last few years.
Oh, geez.
And in his mind, there's only 3 good quarterbacks in this draft. And that does not include Levis, a guy who goes shirtless on social media. There's no way Ballard's going to pick Will Levis. I think the big problem would be if Young and Stroud go 1 and 2, then all you have is 1 quarterback left.
Yeah.
And then Ballard's going to trade up to 3 because he has no other choice at that point.
Now, JT, where do you? I'm not. In other words, I'm not doubting you here. I want you to clarify. Where do you get the impression that Will Levis is not a quarterback Ballard would consider?
Well, just his character traits. That's the number one thing in the Colts organization is character, hard work. I think just his social media appearances are just disastrous for the Colts.
I mean, Kentucky teammates rave about him, JT. Rave about him.
Yeah. I think that the issue they've been playing him up because they want someone else to pick him ahead of the other 3 because then they don't have anybody at 4. If Richardson goes 3 because Seattle or
now what's disastrous about his social media?
The guy goes shirtless and I mean, you never saw Manning do this, eating a raw banana on social media, and the mayonnaise thing is another whole story. So
now you're attacking our credibility when you bring up mayonnaise.
Kevin's been
here.
shirtless. He ate mayo.
Yeah, geez,
that's right.
Gosh,
JT, that's you're are you picking on Kevin or Will Levis?
Jeez. Man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, JT. Let's do play out that scenario though, Jake. Bryce Young 1, CJ Stroud 2. Boom. Arizona's sitting there at 3. Richardson, Levis are on the board. What do you think happens? Team trades up to 3? Is that team the Colts?
Again, because I believe in consistency and I've not gotten any indication to say otherwise, it is my belief that Chris Ballard sees 4 quarterbacks in this draft, that he does not believe any of them at the 4th are separated far enough from the other 3 that it is worth giving up assets to move up 1 spot for. I think he believes the difference is negligible enough amongst particularly 2, 3, and 4 that he is okay to sit at number 4.
What if the Titans jump from 11 to 3, and then you've got the 3rd quarterback in the AFC South off the board?
Again.
You're okay with that?
Well, what are you going to do? If the Titans move up into 3, what are you going to do? You're not going to trade to 2.
Well,
I mean,
what if Arizona calls you and say, hey, the Titans have this offer, we're about ready to accept it. You got any thoughts?
No. I think actually at that point you look at it and you say,
so Richardson
okay,
and Levis are that close for you?
Yes. I think Chris Ballard looks at it and says, okay, I believe that the difference between these 2 quarterbacks is a point, 1 point. And I believe that what Tennessee would give up to move up to that is 2 points. So advantage 1 point for me. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I just don't think quarterbacks are ever viewed like that similarly.
I think they are. I think Ballard has basically said that. I think he's basically said there are 4 quarterbacks that we really, you know what I mean?
You better be right then, because otherwise you're facing 2 of those guys twice a year for the next decade.
That's
plus,
a huge part of it. You know what?
I think in the draft,
Tennessee can
in the NFL draft, the teams that are successful because they worry about themselves. They don't give a damn what everybody else does. This is what we're going to do. This is our mindset. This is what we have. These are the cards in our hand. We are not sitting here playing it. We are just, this is what we do. They don't worry about, and that's what, doesn't every team preach that? I mean, practice what you preach. What do they talk about? We worry about, in this building, we worry about our guys. We keep our nose to the grind. We play it down to quarters. We can't worry about what everybody else is saying. We don't read the papers. We don't listen to the radio, et cetera, et cetera. So put your money where your mouth is. Focus on you, and don't worry about what everybody else does.
Yeah, I think if you have a guy identified, you do everything you can to go get that guy.
Understood. And I don't think they have a guy identified. I don't think that they feel that there's a guy in this. I'm going to stick by that. I don't think that there is one player that they say, come hell or high water, we have to get this guy because we will fail with one of the others. I think they look at it and say, we're good where we are.
Again, Houston at 2, Arizona at 3.
And I may be totally wrong. They might make a trade here in an hour. You know what I mean?
The question you would have with Arizona, of course, will be how far would they want to move back? That would be a big advantage for the Colts. If all of a sudden the Colts do feel the urge to trade up, Arizona might view it and say, hey, we don't want to move too far back. And they might look at, just dropping to 4 and say, perfect. We don't want to go back to 11 where Tennessee is, or 7 where the Raiders are, or a little bit further than where they are currently at. Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, going to join us here in about 5 minutes. Zak Keefer coming up at the top of the hour. Let's hit a morning checkdown.
The morning checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, turn back your clocks to Jeff Van Gundy and Pat Riley. We've got the Heat and the Knicks in an Eastern Conference semifinal. The Heat complete the upset of the Bucks. I think I saw it was the 4th biggest series upset in NBA history. 4-1 last night in Milwaukee. Jimmy Butler did it again, sending the game into overtime, kind of an off-balance, borderline buzzer-beater layup off the glass. He had 42. Bam Adebayo was pretty incredible as well. And Jake, the Bucks, 4-1 losers as Game 5 goes to Miami.
Yeah, and Milwaukee, they had Giannis twice. I mean, you can if you want, you could say injuries, but I think it's less about what Milwaukee had or didn't have throughout the course of the series and more about what Miami's doing now that they are totally healthy. I think the best audio of the night was Giannis after the game. Interesting question from the reporter. I think a decent question, but an even better answer from Giannis after the game last night when the Bucks were eliminated.
Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure? That's what you're telling me? No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why are you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports.
The reason he asked the question is because that's a great answer, and you don't get the great answer without the question. It facilitated for a great response. I do love Giannis, by the way.
The Bucks also were horrible at the free throw line last night. 28 of 45.
Giannis missed 13. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
I mean, failure or whatever. He might think that's too harsh. What I just say? The 4th biggest upset in NBA history. The 1 seed losing 4-1. All right, maybe don't use the word failure, but utter disappointment. Certainly. Out west last night, the Grizzlies extend to another game, so that'll be in L.A. They're down 3-2. And the Warriors get it done over the Kings. De'Aaron Fox, he struggled a bit from an efficiency standpoint with that injured finger on a shooting hand. So that game 6, both of those game 6, Lakers, Grizzlies, Warriors, Kings, will be Friday night. Tonight, Celtics, Hawks in Atlanta. The Hawks trying to extend it to a game 7.
Last night, Major League Baseball, or yesterday in general, Padres over the Cubs 5-3. It was the Blue Jays blanking the White Sox.
Whoa, we got the Reds to talk about. A sweep of the Rangers.
Well, probably their only sweep of the year.
Yeah, that 5-3 score is exactly what Cincinnati used to beat
Don't look
Texas.
now, but here come the Red Legs.
That's exactly right.
Walk-off last night, Nick Senzel. Or yesterday afternoon, I should say.
Cute fellow, by the way, 6-2 over the Red Sox, and the Columbus Clippers 10-7 over the Indianapolis Indians.
Indianapolis Indians an early one today, 11:05 first pitch.
Yeah, day game yesterday. I think a little afternoon yesterday, a little bit of a late morning one today. We mentioned this to lead off the show. Xavier Johnson, he will be back in Indiana for a 6th season. Much needed. Much needed for the Hoosiers. At the same time, they still need to be portal hungry and trying to find some guards and wings to go along with a player that, when he's good, can be all conference, and when he's bad, can look like you're trying to send him to the bench as quick as possible.
Yeah, why not?
What else you got?
Hockey last night. Panthers 4-3 over the Bruins. That extends that series because Boston still leads at 3-2. Same story in Seattle as they managed to stay alive, defeating Colorado 3-2 that series. Or actually, they didn't stay alive. They took the lead in the series. It was tied 2-2. Critical game 5. Seattle wins at 3-2 over the Avalanche. Mark's Avalanche in trouble.
My Lightning are in trouble.
Avalanche.
That's what
Who's your team?
I'm sorry, Kevin's Avalanche.
Who's your team? I still don't remember. You're like, I have like 3 of them.
I do. Either New York team, Islanders or Rangers.
Can you imagine a Yankees Mets fan saying that?
It is weird, I realize.
Have the split jersey, half Rangers, half Islanders.
I'll go Islanders, but they're about to be eliminated.
Well, when the Lightning do get eliminated, I'll take the Rangers then.
Still a little rattled.
What the hell? I want the Rangers if the Islanders are eliminated.
Patrick Kane.
Still not fully over JT attacking shirtless mayo drinking coffee.
That was a shot across the bow at Kevin Bush.
I'd like to, by the way, apologize to listeners, our bosses, the people of Indianapolis, for what right there was probably the sloppiest morning checkdown of all time.
Oh, not even close. Not even the same stratosphere.
A lot of stepping over one another there, right? We
never talk over each other.
We should have raised hands. Excuse me, I'd like to talk now.
Teacher, pick me.
Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts. He joins us next.
Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Picturing this song and like Rick Venturi, Joe Wrights, and Matt Taylor running out to the radio set tonight, right before they go on air.
7 o'clock tonight, they're going to be on this radio station, correct?
Yeah, get some nice, smoke in the tunnel, emerge from that. Matt Taylor, can we make that happen?
That's right. Some dry ice, some strobe lights. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm smacking Venturi in the face. I'm yelling at him. Right. I'm spitting profanities at him, ready to go, trying to get him fired up. Joe Wright is doing monkey rolls in the background. It's going to be epic, dude. I can't wait.
Picturing like
awesome.
I think it was Albert Hainsworth in the locker room prior to a game where, some just poor equipment manager is just absolutely smacking him in the face, getting ready to go. As Jake said, 7 o'clock tonight, it'll be that trio. Matt Taylor, Joe Wrights, Rick Venturi leading off. You guys will be where exactly?
We are going to be at the complex in the indoor facility, sort of in conjunction with the season ticket holder party that's going on at the complex. So that's going to be kind of widespread. It's going to be in Gridiron Hall, which is sort of the banquet area in the Colts facility. So having all the presentation and some guest speakers in there, and some tables and food and then all of that stuff in there. But then there's a big hangout area on the actual indoor practice field and the indoor facility. That's where we'll be, with a bunch of TVs and some lounging areas for people to hang out, watch the draft, and see all the drama unfold with us.
Before we get into actual draft talk, in relation to the show, is there going to be a Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen appearance, pre or post pick?
We'll have a run back of Chris's interview with us last week. He joined us after his pre-draft press conference last Friday, so we'll run that conversation back on our show tonight. And then, if I don't know how this is going to go tonight, I really don't in terms of press conferences. I don't know if the Colts are going to. It's been a minute since we've done this with the Colts picking so high, so I don't know how they're going to handle that with Chris or Shane or both talking either after their pick while the first round's still ongoing, or if they're going to wait till the end of the night to handle their press conference. So regardless of when they talk, especially if they talk while the first round's still going on, picking in the top 5, we'll run that press conference live and get Chris and Shane's thoughts on who they picked that high, if they hang on to it, and we'll run that back in real time. So it's like a blend of a national show with Rick's knowledge and his IQ on all these draft picks, and then very much obviously a Colts and local show as well. So it's a nice little blend there. We'll talk about all the picks in depth, pick by pick, as we go on, but we'll always kind of reset and run back what the Colts did, and then obviously how that affects their immediate future for next season.
Matt, I think we know, obviously that the most signs, to use the magic 8 ball, all signs point towards the Colts taking a quarterback tonight. I think, but at the same time, I think it'd be unfair for me to say to you, okay, which one's it going to be? Because it's the same conversation Kevin and I've had, and we have a pretty good idea who the possibilities are. So I'm going to give you a reprieve for a minute from that to ask you this. What other positions intrigue you in this draft? I mean, maybe not tonight with the 4th pick, but as the draft goes on, what's the position that you feel like there might be kind of a surprise that the Colts go towards, but one of them that, while people aren't talking about it, is an area of need?
That's a great question. Obviously a lot of chatter with the Colts' outside needs other than quarterback center around cornerback, right, in the defensive secondary. And you guys have brought up great points, listening to you guys all along during this process. With the trade with Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Faison going back to the Raiders in free agency, those are big voids, especially in this Gus Bradley defense where both those guys really kind of felt comfortable. And Gilmore, despite his age, was a top 5 player on the Colts roster from last season. And so for him not to be here, that's a void the Colts are going to have to address. That's like 1,500 plus snaps and reps in the secondary that you're going to have to replace. And also, too, Isaiah Rodgers is a free agent this upcoming offseason. Same thing with Kenny Moore. So you really have to kind of address the depth and the long-term stability of that defensive secondary possibly in this draft class. And I think it's good news in that, you talk to Chris and you hear all these other draft pundits that I've talked to, that you guys have talked to. Cornerback depth in the draft is pretty good between the versatility and skill sets of guys that are long and have, long, arm width and things like that are long and lanky that can make plays on the football, but also have that, short area quickness and good footwork that the Colts covet as well. So I think they can get guys like that in this draft. Talking with Rick, he's like, you can get a guy at 5, just as good as a draft pick at 35 in terms of corner value. So that's encouraging. Tight end depth is very, very good, very deep. There's guys that can block and catch in this draft. But for the most part, again, talking to a lot of people going back to the combine, I don't know who's left to talk to in terms of the draft from our angle, your guys' angle as well. But it just seems like the consensus on this draft is, on a whole, is that the draft it's like a good depth draft. Like if you're making a bad metaphor, it's like a good side dish draft, but there's not a lot of, main entrees, maybe outside of like the first 5 to 7 picks in terms of blue chip players. So you're going to get a lot of guys that can come in and be good backups or maybe turn into starting pieces eventually. That's kind of like the big picture on this draft. Obviously exceptions along the way, but maybe it makes sense for the Colts to address wide receiver as well. If they do go the young rookie quarterback route tonight, does it make sense to pair that guy up with a young rookie wide receiver in rounds 2 or rounds 3? So a lot of different areas they can go, obviously, but I think, cornerback, wide receiver, offensive line depth are going to be some of the main concerns the Colts have probably starting tomorrow.
Voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor. Again, draft coverage with him, Rick Venturi, Joe Wrights. Joe Wrights, by the way, going to join us tomorrow. 8:30, Mark?
8:30.
So this exact time slot tomorrow to recap what happens tonight. Mayte, it would be very against the norm, but, part of me thinks, Chris Ballard has said he needs to think about kind of his roster building approach. 16 trades Chris Ballard has made in his 6 drafts as GM. You can really count on one hand how many of those were trading up. Last year, Nick Cross, Jonathan Taylor was a trade up, Kari Willis, Tyquan Lewis. Those are the ones that come to mind. Would you be more surprised if Ballard traded up from 4 or up from 35 back into round 1?
Oh, man, great question. I would probably be more surprised if he went from 4 to 3 tonight. And that's not, I don't have any sort of insider information. I just feel like Chris is really comfortable with the evaluation that he has done. And I think he's really comfortable with Shane. I think he's really comfortable with the fact that Shane comes from a lot of different backgrounds and having it made it work with different styles of quarterbacks. And therefore saying to themselves, whatever we do tonight, whoever falls to us at 4, quarterback-wise, we've got Shane Steichen that can make it work, and we've got belief in the guy that's there with our due diligence, plus Shane's experience in being able to have success with all different styles of quarterbacks. So I'm not saying I would be shocked if they move from 4 to 3, but I'm just saying I think the Colts feel good about all of the work that they have done and put into this point to keep the assets for later on in the draft and feel good about however the first 3 picks unfold and the dominoes that come to them and being able to make it work and feel convicted about whoever's there at the top of their board when they're on the clock at 4.
Rick Venturi and yourself went for about, 45 minutes or so. I think it was last week on the Colts podcast. It was tremendous listen. Rick seems very, very high on Will Levis. I would say, was that an impression that you got as well?
Oh, yeah, very much, very much. Rick is not turned off by the interceptions from a year ago. Kentucky they don't have the luxury of playing with players like Ohio State, with CJ Stroud and the weapons that he has. Maybe the same thing can be said about Alabama to a degree, but maybe not so much this year. with Bryce Young's receiving core. But just generally speaking, he said, I've been on some bad teams and have been around teams that had to rely on their best players and feel like the quarterback had to make every throw and hold on to the ball and try to make something happen every time he touched it. And he kind of sympathizes with Will Levis in that regard. So he's a big context guy when it comes to turnovers and interceptions. Plus, he wasn't playing with a great supporting cast, like I said. He had the injuries last year. So he's able to, I think, kind of compartmentalize Will Levis's last season at Kentucky, and then also couple that with his great year before last with a 10-win season and great completion percentage and all of that. So, if you're just going off of traits, Will Levis is the prototypical quarterback. 6'3", 230, unbelievable arm, can make all the throws. He's confident. Has lifted up, not a bad team, but a team that is, playing in the grueling SEC and, beating teams that, that are above them in class, if you will, from a program standpoint. So, yeah, I would say Rick's number 2 guy is Will Levis behind Bryce Young, but we all think Bryce Young is going to be first overall tonight to the Panthers. And then it's all about the evaluation there from there on out between the Texans and if the Cardinals decide to keep their pick. So it's going to be fascinating tonight, and Will Levis is a huge part of that puzzle.
When it comes historically, this question for either Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts on the Payless Sickers hotline, or Kevin Bowen, sitting to my left. When it comes to the NFL draft historically, what do the University of Chicago, Indiana, Tampa, Rice, and Tennessee State have in common that Alabama does not?
They all have, this is just a shot in the dark here, those programs have all produced number 1 overall draft picks.
That is correct. That is stunning to me.
Gosh.
That theoretically tonight Bryce Young will become the first Alabama player selected number 1 overall.
It's crazy. I looked that up the other day, or maybe that was just it hit me in the face with research. But yeah, Bryce Young tonight has a chance to be the first Alabama player ever to be drafted first overall. That's insane to me. You're exactly right about that.
I mean,
God, talk about a trivia question you would just stump people on.
That actually speaks to a great extent about 2 things, I think, Matt. Number 1, probably the overall balance of Alabama year in and year out. And number 2, the fact that...
Defend the Rock.
That's right.
LEO.
The other thing, too, I think it speaks to is the fact that Alabama, in the years that they have won titles here recently...
Yeah, not great quarterbacks.
Yeah, which is interesting because, you got Tua, who is a starter, and you've got Jalen Hurts, who lost his starting job. And outside of that, a lot of times you are correct. It goes to show at the college level more than the pro level. But when you've got dynamic playmakers at the receiver and on the defensive side of the ball, as Alabama has, you can get away with Kevin Bowen and Matt Taylor and Jake Query as your quarterback, right?
Yeah,
bit.
maybe a little bit better than us.
Corbett Davis, right, as the IU fullback in 1938 there. I'd love to see a fullback go number 1 tonight.
Right, yeah. I'd like to see a fullback get drafted, period.
Sure.
But no, your point, and the fascinating thing about Bryce Young is that he's going to be, from a size and weight standpoint, he's going to be the lightest quarterback drafted in the first round since at least 2003, based on the research that I saw. So, he plays the game in the SEC, again, the best college football conference in the land. And what's shocking to me was when you watch him, the only knock on him is the thing that he can't control, and that's how big he is. But that doesn't show up on tape. I don't know why we continue to knock him for that, because it's not like it was a problem playing against future NFL players week in and week out in the SEC, right? It's not like he's getting balls batted down at the line.
And Matt, here's the thing.
Over the middle.
The numbers that you're looking at, to your point with Bryce Young, with that size, he's doing that against the exact same opponents week in and week out as Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. So you've got a pretty fair barometer there, right, in terms of the judgment, to your point.
Yeah, and he's not missing games, right? I understand why there's a worry. I get why there would give you pause. But, he has been tackled and flung backwards and spun around and things like that and landed awkwardly, and he still hasn't missed time, right? He's still staying available to his team. So, I think he's just got the total package. He's Rick's number one guy by a wide margin. So from that standpoint, it's fascinating, and we'll see if he indeed is the top quarterback taken off the board tonight.
Okay, tonight, again, 7 o'clock, Matt Taylor, Joe Wrights, Rick Venturi. Mayte, the plans for Friday night?
Same thing, although Joe's going to bail. Joe's got some family obligations, so that's to be understood. So
Herding
Rick and I will
cattle
have
there.
you. Yeah, that's right. So Rick and I will have you on Friday. Same setup. We'll start at 6:30 with the last word, kind of our pre-draft, pre-game show, if you will, 6:30 to 7. And then Friday night, the draft actually starts at 7. Tonight, the draft starts at 8, but we're starting at 7. Friday night, we'll grip it and rip it starting at 7 with round 2, go until the end of round 3 on Friday. So I know I threw a lot of times at you and all of that, but just basically bottom line, tune in, Colts.com, the Colts mobile app. You can stream the broadcast, or you can listen on radio. Just stick it here, right here, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan tonight.
And hopefully, and I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but hopefully the draft pick comes into town tomorrow, and at some point there is a press conference. Yep. There might be an interview with Matt Taylor. There might be an interview with maybe JMV. So hopefully we'll hear from the pick on these airwaves in some capacity tomorrow as well.
Indeed, yeah. Hopefully multiple times, multiple ways. That is the hope, and just incredibly excited for it. 4.5 months of watching tape and hearing all this stuff and all the rumors and the conjecture and the combine. I'm so over it and just ready to progress the story forward.
Yeah, Matt, I guess I will end this, and I kind of let off the show with this. Obviously there's excitement over, like you said, for, certainly people that have listened to this show. They're probably sick and tired of some of this talk, and you're just ready to be done with it. I also think there should just be general excitement that the franchise is, in all likelihood, going to try and go down the path that I think you have to go down in order to achieve long-term success. Try to build the football team that in 2030 or 2032, we're talking about the Colts that have, for the last handful of years, have had a legit opportunity at it. It's no guarantee, but I think you're finally going to have a quarterback under center that potentially is, rising or getting better and not necessarily like a depreciating QB like you've had here in the past few years. And that's just been the case considering some of these ages.
You're spot on. Or just wondering, how long can this last? How many good years can they get out of a Phillip Rivers and a Matt Ryan? And so, yeah, I'm totally with you. Tonight's all about hope. It's about building the foundation. That's what the entire offseason has been about, with bringing in a new head coach and a new offensive staff, and hopefully, perhaps tonight, a rookie quarterback that can be, maybe turn into the franchise future. So that indeed is the ideal scenario tonight, and being able to, to build some optimism around this thing. And it's crazy to think about all of the different quarterbacks in the AFC right now, and the amount of parity and competition in this conference, and the Colts need to kind of jump into that, and we'll see. The NFL it's not for long, as we know. That's what it stands for, and every year you see a team go from worst to first. Every year you see 4 teams make the playoffs that did the year before. So the Colts are going to try and crash that party right away, and in the first year of a new regime and a new era with Shane Steichen, and again perhaps a rookie franchise quarterback. So it's going to be fun tonight to see just how those plans come to fruition, and to see Colts fans hopefully get on board with this plan, and a guy that you can market around and be on the side of the building and put their face on a couple of posters here and there, and just get excited again about Colts football after a couple of years of just up and down and trying to find that stability.
Matt, do you think, by the way, my last question for you would be, one of the things or angles that I don't know that we've talked much about, maybe because you got to get step 1 here before you can look at step 2, but I do like Gardner Minshew. Now, that's not to say as your everyday starter, but I think he offers some stability, maturity, experience, certainly. Do you think that he is your week 1 starter and they slowly bring on whoever it is they draft, or do you think that is going to be dependent upon which quarterback it is that they select?
Yeah, great question. I think it's based on the circumstances of the rookie quarterback. I think it all depends on who that guy is, how much experience he has coming out of college, and just how quickly he's able to pick up all the different things that are going to be thrown at him, probably starting in a week and a half, getting the Colts playbook. Gardner Minshew, he can play. I mean, he really can. He's got a career 95 passer rating guy. Just generally speaking, and I'm only speaking for myself, I am of the belief that if you're going to draft a guy in the top 5, he needs to play. Like, if you draft Anthony Richardson, right, just big if Anthony Richardson is the draft pick tonight, I think, like, the big knock on him, or one of those issues that he might have, is that he just hasn't played a lot of football, right? He only played in 13 games at Florida. Well, hypothetically, if he goes back to Florida next year and he's not a part of this draft class, how much better would he become? How much more of these draft issues would he fix by just playing more football? How much more accurate would he become by just having more time on task? So in that light, you might think, well, he's going to get better by just playing football regardless of the level. Let's get him out there, and he can kind of clean up these issues by just having more experience, by just having him play more football. And I'm of the belief, again, that you just throw him out there. You don't put him in bad situations. Don't get me wrong, but you let him learn, you let him grow, and you let him learn from mistakes, and just continue to get better and grow over the course of time. I'm a big baptism by fire guy. I know not everybody subscribes to that. I don't know how Shane feels about that or how Chris feels about that. But I'm a big, like, if you're going to be in the top 5, you got to play, and you got to get all of these kinks out early. I mean, we all saw what Peyton Manning did in his rookie season, and then the next year he just flourished. So I'm a big believer in that, but I think it's based on the guy that you bring in. I think it's circumstantial and how comfortable you feel about handing the keys over to a young rookie quarterback that has so much on his plate while trying to win and contend at the same time.
Yeah, you and me both on the baptism by fire. All right, Matt Taylor, will you go holy mayo instead of holy my if they draft Will Levis?
No, I'm going to draw the line somewhere. I think that's a little too cheesy even for me now.
Oh, look at that. There was a mayo joke in there somewhere. Bete, it's been a while. Enjoy catching up with you. Have fun tonight and tomorrow night, and we'll be tuning in certainly around 7 o'clock.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Good to be with you.
That's the voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor, right there. Zak Keefer joins us next. Kevin and Query on a very nice start to this Thursday.
Inquiry on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Zak Keefer going to join us here in a few. He did a mock draft with his fellow athletic scribes and actually had the Colts trading up. So that'll be something to chat about with Zach. For those curious, the last 6 picks at number 4 overall, honestly, probably the best one is the one that was just taken. That would have been Sauce Gardner, cornerback for the Jets. You had Kyle Pitts to the Falcons. Andrew Thomas has been a great selection, offensive tackle for the Giants. Cleveland Farrell, a massive bust by the Raiders. Jake, that's a Clemson dude that I feel like when he was taken, everyone was like, what? That high?
Totally. Well, he was in a defensive line with Dexter Lawrence, Christian Watkins. I'm trying to think of who the other one was. And it was like he was seen as like the third or fourth of the 4. And then John Gruden reached for him in the top 5, and even Clemson fans were like, wait, hold on, what?
Yeah, that was the start of like the Mayock Gruden, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Denzel Ward in 2018, I'll never forget the Colts' loud screams when Denzel Ward was taken at 4, because that meant that they would be getting Quentin Nelson at 6. Quentin Nelson, or I forget who went 5 that year. Was it Bradley Chubb? Knowing they get one of them. Ward's been, decent for the Browns. And then Leonard Fournette. So running backs just don't go that high anymore. At least the thought is Bijan Robinson will not be going that high. All right, Zak Keefer from The Athletic joins us now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Zach, did I see a little trade up out of you in the Athletic mock draft?
Yeah, I think if I think we all can agree the draft really starts at 2 tonight, and if CJ Stroud makes it past 2, I think the Colts need to have a conversation. I don't know if they have CJ Stroud ahead of Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. That's what we're going to find out tonight. But I feel like if Stroud makes it, don't overthink it. It's night and day how much better of a passer he is than the other two, in my opinion. And walking off the field at the combine, everyone's talking about Anthony Richardson's speed and his jumping ability, and he can throw the ball a mile. But the best quarterback on the field that day by far was CJ Stroud, and I went back to that. Now, Bryce Young didn't throw, but I don't think Bryce Young's going to be available. So if given the opportunity, I went up and got the Ohio State kid.
The takes 2 to tango, and that makes it sound like I'm being defiant on your theory, but you got to figure that if CJ Stroud's available there, is somebody going to be, with more assets, going to vault in front of Indianapolis at 3 and make a deal with Arizona?
Yeah, Dick, that's fair. And I think the team I keep hearing about when I talk to people about the draft, that not a lot of people are talking about, is Atlanta. Now, maybe they'd be willing to move up. Now, the other team that scares you is Tennessee, because Tennessee, it doesn't seem like they're very high on Malik Willis. We think the Ryan Tannehill training has sort of expired, or will in the near future. What are they going to do? And is a division rival going to jump you to get the quarterback you have your eyes on? Now, the sell to Arizona, if you're the Colts, is you're still going to get your guy, right? We're not going to take your guy. You're going to get the same exact player. And I think that matters as opposed to going back to 8 or 10 or whatever. But the reality is you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay to block somebody out. And Mike Chappell, our buddy, was mentioning yesterday, like it might cost you a couple of tooth. I don't think the Colts want to part with twos. That's been the round where they've done the most damage over the years. We'll see. They got a couple extra 5s, but it's not going to be cheap to pay just to block out some teams that might want to move on.
Zach, here's one thing that we've broken down all this stuff with you, with your colleagues a gabillion times, right? So here's what I want to do just to give people kind of a perspective. I'm going to name. We're going to take Bryce Young off the table because I think we can, unless something seismic happens, Bryce Young is going to go number 1 to Carolina, okay?
Right.
So then we'll go Levis, Richardson, Stroud, and I'll actually throw Hendon Hooker in there, but we'll table that for a second. So when I give you each name, I want you to tell me at their absolute ceiling what player they most remind you of in terms of the career that they could have when it's all said and done. They will look like what player's career when it's all said and done. And I'll begin with Will Levis.
Well, if you want to do high ceiling, Jake, it's Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen. He's got that kind of athletic build. He didn't come in with the same accuracy concerns as Josh Allen, but, the more probable sober comparison might be Ryan Tannehill. And that might scare me because I think the other two have a little bit of a different ceiling.
Okay, second, Anthony Richardson.
So the obvious answer here is Cam Newton. That's what he's been hearing his whole life. He looks like him, but I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go Donovan McNabb. For those who remember his peak days with the Eagles, he was a stud, and he came in with a little bit of accuracy concerns coming out of Syracuse, played with the great Marvin Harrison. But the reality is, I think Richardson might have a higher floor than a lot of people realize, simply because what he can do with his feet, with his legs. I mean, this guy had like 7 60-yard runs for touchdowns last year in the SEC. Like, that just doesn't happen very often. Now, he's got to get better, but I would rather attack a guy's footwork than attack his pocket instincts. And I'm not sure how much better those pocket instincts can improve in the NFL. And that's my biggest red flag with Will Levis. Richardson does so much you can't teach. And that's going to be a big factor in this decision. And I think, honestly, if I'm the Colts, I might let Shane Steichen make the final call. That's not to say they won't have a consensus, but I would lean on the coach who's done it with 3 different skill sets, who's done it really well. This is why he's here. You hired him, and you gave him a 6-year contract. Like, let him work with this guy's footwork and see what he can do with an absolute specimen as a physical football player.
Okay, CJ Stroud.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because the knocks are he's too robotic, and he didn't run until the end. But if you put on the tape, he was the best player on the field against the best team in college football and the best defense in that Ohio State-Georgia game. So I don't really know. I mean, he's a pocket passer.
Eli Manning?
Yeah, I mean, but he's way
I feel like
more
people have
mobile.
said Dak Prescott.
Yeah, maybe without. Yeah, I can see that. But again, I think he's more mobile than Dak, and I think he showed that against Georgia. But we'll see. We'll see.
Did you go through all of them, Jake? Sorry,
I did.
I'm making sure.
Well, okay, Hendon Hooker would be the last one.
I don't think he's in play for the Colts, to be honest. I just don't see it.
Zak Keefer's with us here from The Athletic on the Payless Liquors hotline. Zach, I wanted to shift a little bit to kind of Chris Ballard's thinking. When you look at this offseason so far, I would have called it very normal for Chris Ballard. I mean, I don't think he did anything in free agency that was that out of the norm for him. I guess he gave big money to a kicker, but I mean, that would maybe be it. The offensive moves have been virtually non-existent. Defensively, a couple things, nothing on the O-line. So now we enter the draft, which is the other big part of the offseason. Obviously, quarterback will be a pick, but I'm curious, and this would be very anti-Chris Ballard, but I'm curious, will we see a trade up out of him? Maybe it could be, I guess, at 4 to the mock draft that you did, or maybe at 35 you trade back into round 1 to get a premium player on a 5-year rookie contract. Again, Ballard is the king of trading back, but for a guy that has been asked the question now several off seasons in a row about, do you need to change your roster building philosophy? Nothing has really changed in free agency. Do you expect anything different in the draft with his philosophy?
Yeah, nothing has changed. And to his point, I do understand it to a degree because this was a pretty mediocre free agent class, and that's just going to add fuel to his fire in terms of not paying B players A money, right? So I get that. But again, if you look at what they've done, they lost a starting linebacker, they lost a starting receiver, they lost a defensive end in Yannick Ngakoue, and they didn't really replace him. I mean, Isaiah McKenzie, but how much does that do for you? Really? Samson Ebukam? Sure. Good player, plays the run better than Yannick, but they're really just doubling down on this approach. And this very approach absolutely blew up in their face last year when they decided 2 spots in the offensive line, they were just going to roll with what they had and hope for the best. 60 sacks was what happened, and you nearly got Matt Ryan killed a couple times. So the reality is that approach hasn't worked. Does he trade up in this draft? Time to do it, man. Time to roll the dice a little bit. He is the king of those 5-year rookie deals. He likes to get the most value as he can from those lower-priced contracts. But the reality is They just haven't done that very often. I think they traded up for Jonathan Taylor a couple of spots, which makes a lot of sense. And maybe they move from 4 to 3 tonight. We'll see what Arizona wants. But they've got a lot of holes to fill, and I don't like the right guard spot. I don't love the backup tackle position because I don't think they really have one, and Ryman's no sure thing. And then secondly, you need receivers, and my goodness, do you need cornerbacks? Like, as of tomorrow, if you were starting a game, it'd be Dallas Flowers and Isaiah Rodgers, and that's just if you're an imposing quarterback, that's heaven on earth because you're going to attack those guys. So they got a lot of holes to fill, and they really sat out of free agency, like you said, for the most part, except for, maybe the Matt Gay signing. But I don't know. We'll see. But, again, I'm a little hesitant to say they're going to trade back up into the first round because what did he tell us on Friday? There's only 17 first-round grades on their board. They're not going to force a pick if they don't believe that's a first-round guy. So we'll see. But, everyone's talking about the first-round pick. They do have a really, really high second-round pick, and that's a really valuable pick as well.
Zach, somebody just sent me this question via text. I think it's a great question, and it takes a second to stop and kind of conceptualize it. But do you think Chris Ballard believes in Shane Steichen more than he believes in any of the 4 quarterbacks in this draft?
That's great. That's a really good point. He better, because
I think the answer is yes, by the way.
I think it should be. And that's why he's here, and I think that's why he might have the final say over Jim Irsay. I really believe that, because this is the guy that's gonna tailor his offense to what this guy does well. And the game is shifting, and the way you can scare a defense is shifting. I know Jim Irsay is on board with a running quarterback. He's mentioned to me a couple times in the past couple years having 2 quarterbacks up on game day that play. One runs and one passes. He feels like that just adds so much stress to a defense. Now,
Has he not watched Indiana?
Right.
What a wild concept.
But, the best of both, right? The best of both worlds just might be the kid out of Florida. We'll see. But I do think they're going to have patience with this guy. But, no, that's a really good point. They are betting as much as they are on this quarterback. The bet's on Shane Steichen as well.
Yeah, that would be where my bet would lie, the belief in his resume. All right, Zach, we'll end with this because we know it's going to be a long day for you, a long night for you. I think you have said recently that you think it's Anthony Richardson. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. And maybe that the Will Levis smoke you think is a tad overblown.
I'm not buying the Will Levis smoke as much as everybody else. I think if I had to make a decision, gun to my head, I think the odds are it's probably going to be Richardson. But then again, I think it could be any one of the 3. It genuinely could be any one of the 3. And that's going to be the fun part. And trust me, people inside the building that usually know where this team's going to go with their first pick have no idea. So this is locked down, clamped down. He's not telling anybody. So we're going to find out about 8:15, 8:30 tonight.
Zach, which do you think is more realistic as, BS smoke that is being fanned by a team in hopes of influencing things around them? CJ Stroud dropping or Will Levis rising?
I don't buy the Will Levis stuff at all. Like the Reddit rumors and like him going number 2 or number 1, like I just feel like that's classic draft BS. I've watched the tape. I just don't see number 1 pick in that tape. But again, I'm not a draft nut. But I think CJ Stroud, I think he might be the most interesting player in this draft, in this top 10. Because where does he go? If he goes past Houston and someone's willing to draft Anthony Richardson over him, that tells you a whole lot. Because just 2 months ago, a lot of people would have told you he would have been the number 1 pick. So we'll see. Levis could go anywhere from probably, 3 to 19.
Which one has the greatest fall potential? Of those 3, I asked Kevin this earlier. Of those 3 guys, which one, if the Colts bypass on them, would have then the most precipitous fall after Indianapolis?
I would lean Levis. Because I think the general consensus, which I don't agree with, is that the Colts are higher on Levis than a lot of other teams. But we'll see. I mean, if he's the next Ryan Tannehill, do you need to spend the 4th overall pick on him? Can you get him at 10 or 11 or 12? I think there's a huge difference between picking 4th and picking 10th, right? It just feels like you have to get a premium player at 4. But we'll see. But I think it starts at 2. And I think the interesting thing that we shouldn't be surprised about is if somebody goes up and drafts Anthony Richardson ahead of CJ Stroud. I don't think that's as much of a surprise today as it would have been 3 months ago.
Gosh, just crazy to think about. All right, Zach, if you can, either play golf or take a nap today.
I got to go teach my class, man.
Yeah, you and me both. All right, Zach, see you later, man.
See you guys.
That's Zak Keefer right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. 8 o'clock, things will get underway on the clock. 7 o'clock, our coverage will begin with the draft. Latest Vegas odds, again, Bryce Young, all but a lock to go 1 right now, according to one gambling app. Will Anderson plus 125 to go number 2. That drops all the way to Will Levis at plus 300. So under that scenario, under the Vegas scenario, you're going Alabama 1, Alabama 2. That means at 3, you would have Stroud, Richardson, and Levis on the board. Under that scenario, Jake, would Stroud have enough separation in your eyes to move up to 3? I know you've been, sit there at 4 and just let one of them fall to you. Would it be worth a couple third-round picks to move up to 3?
No.
CJ Stroud is not that big of a separation from Anthony Richardson and Will Levis?
To me, it's not, because the Colts don't have that flexibility. You know what I mean?
2 third-round picks, not worth it?
Yeah, I think they have enough holes elsewhere on their roster that they've got to. I mean, at this point, I've got sand up to the back of my calves because I'm so dug in with my heels on this. You stay at 4.
Yeah, I'd argue quarterback is a gargantuan hole compared to a second corner, and that if you get QB right, it's worth moving up.
I don't disagree, but what I'm saying is I think that, and I do love Stroud, but I think that you still get a quarterback at 4 that is not as big a separation. I just maintain that.
And obviously, what the trade calls would look like for Arizona under that situation would be very interesting. The best case scenario for the Colts under that situation is you would hope that Arizona has a guy they somewhat covet and they don't want to move too far back for.
If you're Arizona, you are praying that Houston takes who at 2?
Well, I guess it depends what you want.
Will Anderson?
If you have Will Anderson as your top guy, you want Houston to take a quarterback. Then you would just take Will Anderson at 3. Bless you. But you're looking for the best trade package, you would probably want Will Anderson to go 2, therefore someone trades up for CJ Stroud. If that's the thinking.
I think Will Anderson, by the time it's all said and done, he might be the best player in the draft.
Right. It's a question we've thrown to various draft analysts over the past month. If you had to pick one Hall of Famer from this draft class, obviously a big question, but the name is probably Will Anderson. Or maybe it's the running back. Maybe it's Bijan Robinson.
It could be some lineman, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance the Colts get some draft capital at some point, though? Because they have 1 pick in each of the first 4 rounds. I feel like they have so many needs, they're going to trade down at some point.
Yeah, I have been a big advocate in trading up because I think this is a roster that needs more high-end talent than just depth pieces. Depth has gotten you to this point. High-end talent can be a separator. But, Mark, that is my thought, not Chris Ballard's thought. Mm-hmm. I think if I had to bet, I'd assume that the 35th pick turns into, and I'm just spitballing here, turns into 43 and 86. You trade back 8 or 9 spots in round 2, and you get an additional third. Chris Ballard, in his 6 drafts, has had 12 second-round picks. There's no round he's drafted more in than round 2. So I could see a trade up there for sure.
You realize that we're within 12 hours
trade back,
now.
I guess.
11 hours, right?
Somewhere in there. Some PBRs right now. I think the mayo's still in the fridge. If you guys want to do one more go at it.
Oh, shockingly, it didn't get eaten all yesterday?
No, it's still there, I think.
Did you guys like the Holy Mayo instead of Holy My for Matt Taylor if Levis gets picked?
I do like it. Print a t-shirt.
Well, JT wouldn't like it. Unless I was wearing that t-shirt. Maybe he didn't like shirtless me.
That's true. Well,
yeah, a guy calls in, for those that are unfamiliar, an hour ago, and says, first off, this was my favorite thing. They shouldn't draft Will Levis because his social media is a disaster. You didn't see Peyton Manning doing that. Peyton Manning was 1998.
We were 20 years away from Instagram.
And Peyton Manning wasn't ripped like Will Levis, right?
You're going to find some pretty good football players that have some pretty interesting social medias, just FYI.
Yeah, especially in today's day, right?
On the pop quiz coming up, we'll give away a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix. Are we still doing 2 road races at IMS this year?
Yes, there's another one later in the year. Not this weekend, but there's another one that with the NASCAR weekend.
Oh, yeah. So that's what, August? Something like that?
That July or August. You'd think I'd know that off the top of my head, right?
And they did road course last year for NASCAR. Did they do one on the road, one on the oval? I'm trying to jog my memory there.
I'm trying to jog my memory there as well. Last year, didn't they say
we might need a shot of mayo now, Mark?
They'll return to the oval soon, but it was still road course. The schedule, by the way, the Gallagher Grand Prix is August 12th. That is the other road course race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for IndyCar.
That's on the Brickyard weekend.
Correct.
So this pair of tickets, of course, will go to, I think it's May 13th coming up here. A couple Saturdays to the road course race, along with the Jiffy Lube oil change. Let's start off the morning checkdown, though, with quite the busy night in the NBA.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Jimmy bleepin' Butler. He did it again last night and finished off the Milwaukee Bucks. 42 points for Jimmy Butler. An incredible performance. They were down 16 at the start of the fourth quarter. Send it into overtime on like a fall-away, one-legged shot by Butler. And then they win in OT. So the Bucks are done 4-1. The 8-seed Heat over the 1-seed Milwaukee Bucks. And now they will take on, Jake, the New York Knicks.
Yeah, the Knickerbockers right there. So Knicks Heat, party like it's, 1999, something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Tim Hardaway and Vashawn Leonard, baby.
Action tonight, by the way, Boston and Atlanta. That is a Game 6 as the Celtics lead 3-2. That game is an 8:30 tip. Other scores from last night. We didn't talk a lot about it, Memphis and the Lakers, but the Grizzlies avoided elimination because they win 116-99. Not a great game for LeBron James, who said, I'll be good in Game 6. 15 and 10 boards. Hard to say that's not a good game. I mean, it's a double-double, but not typical LeBron, obviously.
Desmond Bain, Jake.
33 points and 10 boards. John Morant had 31 and 10. Jalen Jackson Jr., 18 and 10.
It's never a good night when I'm watching the game and I'm like, should LeBron be out there in the fourth quarter? Yeah. It was one of those moments like, Darvin Ham, should you just be resting these guys? And then the Kings, Warriors, again, first road win in that series. The Warriors go up 3-2 in that one. So you get both the West Game 6 tomorrow night, Memphis and LA, and Golden State and Sacramento. Yesterday in Major League Baseball, break up the Reds and break out the Broomsticks. That's a sweep of the Rangers.
Don't look now, but here come the Red Legs.
Hotter than you know what right now, the Reds. Okay. Nick Senzel with a 2-run walk-off there. 5-3 they win. And unfortunately, the Cubs lost yesterday.
Yeah, Cubs 5-3 losers to the Padres. Cardinals also on the short, and they lost to San Francisco 7-3.
Cardinals are losing quite a bit to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
Just wait. They like to just... There's a strategy with those psychopaths. Columbus over the Indianapolis Indians 10-7, by the way.
Don't look now, but here come the Red Legs.
Oh, play it again. Thank you, Mark. Maybe a third time's a charm.
That was me right there.
That's right.
Indy Fuel Game 4 tonight. They're trying to keep their season alive up at the Coliseum, taking on Toledo. And the Indians have got, a 135, something like that?
I think we said 11:05, didn't we?
11:05. That's education and baseball.
135 was
a bunch
Wednesday.
of kids there today.
It is funny. I was watching the Reds game yesterday, and when they have those kid games, oh my gosh. You talk about the just natural sound. Just screaming and yelling at ball, strike, grab.
Do they do the chant?
Pass ball. Welcome to our cemetery. This is where you will be buried.
Toledo Mud Hens shaking in their boots. What's the average sugar level at those games?
Now, wait a minute. Toledo Mud Hens are here and the Toledo Walleye are here to play the Fuel?
If the Toledo Mud Hens are there.
It's the Clippers for the Indians.
I was going to say, do they travel together?
You imagine the amount of nerd rope and fun dip being sold at those games? All right, it is time for the pop quiz. 317-239-1070. Again, Jiffy Lube oil change and a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix. Coming up next here, Kevin and Corey.
107.5 The Fan. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
Very manageable. Well, number 5 is a little weird, but other than that, pretty manageable.
Pair of tickets to the Grand Prix 2 weeks from Saturday. And then Jiffy Lube oil change up for grabs on today's Pop Quiz. Yeah, scrolling through it as well. 5 is certainly probably deserved 5 after the first 4, to be frank. Yeah, it has been a little bit there with number 1. All right, a number, Jake, 1 through 8.
Colts are drafting 4th tonight, right?
Yes, correct. Well, as of now.
You think they're going to go 3rd?
Well, I don't know. I'm not holding my breath if they trade up, but
all right, I'll go 4.
4 is who?
Eric.
Hey, guys.
Eric, how you doing?
Not too bad. You?
Eric, did you call earlier this week, or is that a different Eric?
I called earlier this week.
What? No, wait a minute. You can't play twice in 1 week, can you? No offense.
No, I
Eric.
didn't play the game.
Ah, okay. Well, that's cool.
I thought we had an Eric.
Did we play Get to Know Your Listener with you, Eric?
No, I was talking about Hendon Hooker.
That's right. Oh, yeah, I know who you are, Eric. It took a second there. Eric, in all the times that you and I have talked on the radio, which is a lot, and I appreciate that, I don't think I've ever played Get to Know Your Listener with you. Can we participate in this little game? We have wild success with this. Are you willing to partake here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Eric, if you don't mind me asking, who was President of the United States in the year of your birth?
I believe that was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan.
Okay. And when you were a senior in high school, Eric, who was the rival high school that you most despised?
I went to Danville, so it'd either be Avon or Tri-West.
Welcome to our city. My dad went to Danville. Eric?
Did he?
What year did you graduate? Well, I guess I could go off your birth year. What year did you graduate?
It would have been 05.
Well, I don't think that matches up with old Brad Bowen. But
Eric, when you get up and go to work and like today or whatever it might be, what time do you get up to go to work, and what sort of work are you doing throughout the course of the day?
I actually work a night shift. I go in at 6, and I work for a logistics company.
Wait, so you go in at 6 p.m. and then you get off at what time?
6 a.m. Yeah, a little rough.
So when do you sleep? Are you getting ready for bed here in a little bit?
Oh, no, I was off last night. So that was good.
Eric, you don't know what today is, do you?
I know it's time. I know it's draft, and I'm watching.
He knows it's time to call in the pop quiz.
That's right.
He knows the number.
I want Hendon Hooker, guys. I want Hendon Hooker. I think Colts will shock everybody. There's always a shock. I think it's Hendon Hooker.
Eric, how many times have you eaten at the Mayberry Cafe?
Too many to count.
What about that?
Too many to count.
Is that one place still there with the big baked potatoes, Dave's or whatever it was called?
That place is actually empty now.
It is? Okay.
Yes,
good baked potatoes. All right, here we go, Eric. Would you like for me, that would be Jake, or for Kevin to lead you off with question number 1?
Either one's fine.
All you, Jake.
Okay. All right, here we go. Question number 1. Who did the Colts take last year in the first round of the draft? Was it A, Alec Pierce, B, Bernard Ryman, C, they traded the first-round pick away, or D, they had multiple first-round picks?
They didn't have a first-round pick. They traded it away. Yeah. Carson Wentz.
Quite the memory to bring up, but yeah, good call, Eric. All right, the Bucs became just the 5th number 1 seed to be eliminated by an 8 seed in NBA playoff history last night. Who was the first? The Heat, the Spurs, the Mavericks, or the Supersonics?
The Supersonics.
What? Eric is sharp with how just maybe the night shift.
Eric, question number 3. The Knicks eliminated Cleveland from the NBA playoffs last night. The first time the Knicks have won a playoff series since 2013. Who did they knock off 10 years ago in their last playoff series win? Was it the Boston Celtics, the Bulls, the Hawks, or your Indiana Pacers?
They beat this team to play the Pacers, right?
Correct.
Goodness. It was, I'm going to say it was the Hawks.
The sound mark, the Hawks sound that we had earlier. All right, number 4, 40 years ago today, Nolan Ryan recorded his 3,509th career strikeout, setting the major league record. He would finish his career with an incredible 5,714 Ks. Who currently stands second on the all-time strikeouts list? Did this guy hit a hawk that one time? A, Walter Johnson, B, Randy Johnson, C, Steve Carlton, or D, Roger Clemens?
We'll go Steve Carlton.
All right, question 5 for you. The Seattle Kraken beat the Avalanche 3-2 last night in Denver. They take a 3-2 lead in their opening round Stanley Cup playoff series. If they were to win the series, they would be the second team in NHL history to eliminate the reigning Stanley Cup champion, and doing so in their first postseason appearance. Who is the only other franchise that has accomplished, and to this point, the only franchise to accomplish that feat? Is it the Edmonton Oilers, the Montreal Maroons, the Maroons of Montreal, or the team from Montreal known for a color?
Gosh, I don't know hockey. I'm just the Montreal Maroons.
Were you valedictorian at Danville here, Eric?
Good choice there, Eric.
Good
Did I
work.
get them all right?
You're close. He got the first 2 right, Jake. They did trade out of round 1 last week. Supersonics losing to the Nuggets in 94. Number 3, though. Who did the Knicks beat in that 2013 first-round series? He said the Hawks.
Pretty good guess.
Was that a Celtic sounder?
No, that was a Hawk, and then he got the question wrong.
Oh, okay.
So that was the follow-up.
It was the Boston Celtics.
Randy Johnson, Montreal Maroons.
Stay on the line.
Said they're going to shock the world. Get Henry Hooker, right?
You don't even get allowed to come in our home game. You're a complete loser.
6 drafts in the history of Chris Ballard. Jake, he's made 3 first-round selections. You got those 3?
Oh, boy. 3 first-round selections.
Traded out 3 times and has made 3.
Jonathan Taylor was a second-rounder, wasn't he?
Taylor was a second.
Pittman was a second-rounder, right?
Pittman was, 34 overall.
See, I get very confused, admittedly. The years run together to me, and I get confused between Grigson and Ballard.
Okay, so 2017, Ballard's first draft. This got me thinking based off who Eric wants. Hooker, Malik. That was at 15 overall. Then the next year he comes back, and he makes quite a successful selection in Quentin Nelson at 6 overall.
Yeah, obviously should have known that.
2019, you trade out for DeForest Buckner that year. 2020, I might have those years mixed up. 2019, trade out and take Rocky Scene early second. 2020, you traded that pick for Buckner. 2021, the first-round pick then.
Give me the school, please.
The school from up north.
Oh, of course, Quiddy
Pay, and then 2022, of course, the Carson Wentz trades. Only one
Quiddy Pay,
selection.
would you say at this point, probably now starting to show on track of being a good player?
Yeah, you would like a little more. I think you would like health probably more than anything. Last year he missed 5 games, and he said it yesterday. He actually met the media yesterday. That's the biggest thing for him. It's just staying healthy. 12 of 17 games he played in last year. I think you see some signs of becoming a double-digit sack guy, but health is vital for him.
Malik Hooker is still in the league, correct?
Yeah, didn't he have a decent season with Dallas?
I think he did, yeah. He had a pick, I think, in the playoffs, right? Or one of their critical games down the stretch.
The debate that year was Hassan Reddick or Malik Hooker. I want to say Reddick went a couple of picks before they took Hooker. That was just the awkward draft where Pagano was still around, and that was just the draft filled with bust, really, for the Colts in terms of Quincy Wilson and Terrell Basham. Zach Banner.
Boy, Quincy Wilson was just one of those every week healthy scratch question marks, right? Like, what is going on with Quincy Wilson?
His brother's playing in the league. You remember his brother at Florida when he threw the shoe late in the game and got a 15-yard penalty?
I do remember that.
Not the wisest move.
the draft, the thing that makes me laugh is the number of guys, like, and I understand it, and it is fun as heck, don't get me wrong, and I love the NBA draft as well. But people get, myself included, you get all convinced or worked up over one player versus another. I don't mean in the top 4. I mean like later or like in the second round. And then more often than not, Kevin, unless it's your team, it's guys that, like, you hardly ever hear from them again, right? Yeah. The people that, like, in round 5, you're looking on Twitter and people are like, I really like the left guard from Texas A&M at this position. Okay. I mean, really?
But then again, who's the next Robert Mathis?
I get it.
I mean, last year, the Colts' best or the most, I think, notable day 3 pick. Remember we had Luke Fickell on? He was raving about Curtis Brooks. Remember that? Defensive tackle. Called him like their MVP last year on their semifinal team. Curtis Brooks got cut by the Colts like in December.
Give me a number 10 to 25.
Let's go lucky 13.
13. Now give me a year 2010 to 2020. Give me a year.
Let's go 2014.
The 2014 NFL Draft. Let's look and see who the 13th selection was. Ooh, nice. Look at you.
Who we got?
Aaron Donald.
Oh, wow. God.
One spot ahead of Kyle Fuller.
Well, wasn't he? I thought, was he
The
one
Bears
spot behind Zach Martin?
He was one spot behind Odell Beckham.
I remember Zach Martin being around that range, too.
How about this?
That draft was loaded.
In that draft, Sammy Watkins, 4th overall.
Trade up, right, by the Bills?
Yeah, you look at, remember yesterday we talked to John McClain. He was talking about how Jadeveon Clowney was the biggest no-brainer ever. They took Jadeveon Clowney. Houston did number 1 overall. Khalil Mack went 5th. Like I said, Aaron Donald and Odell Beckham, 13 and 12, respectively. Zach Martin went 16th.
Gosh, think about that. Just no-brainer first ballot Hall of Famers at Donald and Martin.
Give me one more year, 2010 to 2020.
Let's go 2019.
Probably a little early on this draft.
2019, let's go pick 18.
The 18th pick in 2019. Garrett Bradbury.
Vikings, is that right?
Center for the Vikings, yep.
Can't say I know too much about Garrett's career.
He was the 2018 Dave Remington Trophy winner, which, of course, goes to the best center in college football. That draft, by the way, Nick Bosa, 2nd overall, Kyler Murray, number 1. You got to think they're probably like, yeah, boy, All
right, we'll do it one final time here. Kevin and Query on Draft Day. Round it out.
fan.
Ked Woodley. We had him on my old show. He was fabulous. One of the best interviews I've ever done.
Now, what is this?
Dominate the foe, my friend.
You don't
Carolina
remember this?
Panthers on the clock.
Gosh,
Go ahead
no, I
and
don't.
bump that up a little bit, Mark.
Dominate the foe. Carolina Panthers with sharp teeth and claws. We growl to win this game. We call pro football.
He had a follow-up called...
he needs to marry that Jacksonville
Morning Coffee.
Jaguars woman.
Yeah, she's unfortunately no longer with us.
Oh, well. R.I.P. Apologies on that.
She was
end.
great.
Was that Cam
How many
Newton's
heaters
pick?
did she smoke before that interview?
What's that?
How many darts was she smoking?
I know. She was great, though.
There might have been some stuff in that smoke that I don't know if it was totally illegal on that end. Bryce Young for Frank Reich, right?
By the way, there's a million things that say that to be the first number 1 overall selection for Alabama. They actually had, and I guess if you want to get technical, 1948 in the the National League, before it was the merged NFL. There was one player that was selected number 1 overall out of Alabama. You think it's going to be Bryce Young for certain, Kevin?
Yeah, sounds like it. Mel Kiper just came out with his final mock draft. Mel has got Bryce Young and Will Anderson 1-2. So Houston not taking a quarterback, and then he's got the Tennessee Titans trading up to 3 to take CJ Stroud.
And then who's he have 4?
He has Will Levis to the Colts.
See, the problem I have with mock drafts of trades is it's just that's prognosticating on prognostication. You know what I mean? Unless he has information where Tennessee said, "Look, we're trading up." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's a difficulty we run into with this draft. You have Arizona, the new GM. He comes from Tennessee. Tennessee has a new GM. So those are just kind of some outliers and some unpredictability to this draft. And each of the top 4 teams, all with new head coaches.
yeah, that part's interesting.
And I guess how does DeMeco Ryans from San Francisco look at it? He comes from San Francisco. He's now the head coach in Houston. Texans, I guess Deshaun Watson for a couple of years. That's it in their existence of a franchise and any semblance of a franchise QB. Does he look at it, though, from the San Francisco way of things of oh, no, we just put a QB into a system? Well, yeah, it helps when you've got Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. You don't have that in Houston. So how will they operate? Will they go with Will Levis, like John McClain told us at this hour yesterday? I'm just so glad it's here.
Yeah.
For many reasons.
I don't think you're alone in that regard, right?
For many reasons.
Mel's draft, by the way, for the Texans, Anderson at 2, and then he's got them taking Anthony Richardson at 12.
And then did he have... I thought he had Hooker around that area, too.
Hendon Hooker.
Or Levis. Was Levis around that area? No, I just said
right
Levis to
now.
the Colts.
Levis, he's got going...
He's got Levis to the Colts, right?
Yeah, Levis to the Colts. Hendon Hooker, I'm trying to see... I'm scrolling.
Yeah, Hooker's over-under in round 1 is... or just overall, is 31.5. So literally...
that's basically asking.
Yeah.
You think
He's got Hendon Hooker going 31 to the Los Angeles Rams via a mock trade with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, see the trade stuff to me with
Sean
a mock.
McVay doing some stuff.
You remember Sean McVay, was it last year or 2 years ago when he was they had no first, they had no picks like the first
picks,
5 rounds. Remember when he was hammered at some sponsor thing and some player got selected and he started laughing?
Oh, it was a Belichick. It was a Patriot, right? That's when he started laughing.
We don't have that audio, do we? I can't remember the player it was that he was mocking. He was like, "Did they just take him? We had him in the 3rd round."
Yeah, that was the Super Bowl year when they traded away all those picks. And
so was that last year's draft or 2 years ago?
I think it would have been last year, right? They traded away the future picks to go all in.
I mean, it paid off, right?
Certainly.
It is interesting, though, that that's a case of, as Matt Taylor was saying, NFL not for long. Sean McVay 2 years ago was the absolute, he was the golden boy, right? And now it's okay, he's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think they still have staff.
A lot of times if as an example, you really
just went.
Oh my, UT Chattanooga to the first round. Hey, where is?
How about that? And we wasted our time watching him thinking he'd be at 104 maybe.
So now who was it, though?
Cole Strange, an offensive
it,
lineman
yeah.
from Tennessee Chattanooga.
I'm looking here to see. I have no idea how many games he played last year. I mean, do we know, like, is he...
I don't know. The Patriots, I feel like they have some obscure offensive linemen at times. So, again, our coverage will get underway tonight, 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock is when things officially get started. I'm guessing the Colts will pick around 8:40 or so, barring no trades. Again, I would turn in the card pretty quickly if CJ Stroud is there. If you're going to make me pick Richardson or Levis, I'd give the slight edge to Richardson.
By the way, Strange started all 17 games last year.
There you go.
Doesn't mean he played well, but he started all 17 games.
Mark, you got a pick for the Colts?
If CJ Stroud is off the board, which I expect him to be, I say Anthony Richardson is the Indianapolis Colts quarterback.
And you're hoping for who for the Bears at 9?
I think the Bears trade down, barring Jalen Carter being there. Well, they don't have a pick from 9 until like 52.
Really?
I was like, there's no way they're going that far without picking again. There's been rumors they might trade with the Steelers at 17.
That's got to be one of the biggest drops ever for a number 1 overall team to go that far. Jake, and you've been pretty steadfast in the Will Levis camp?
I still say Levis. The curveball being, and I'm not trying to hedge, if Stroud's there, I think they take Stroud, but I don't think he's going to be there. I have said all along that I think it's Levis, so I'll stay with Levis.
Yeah, we'll recap all of it tomorrow. Joe Wright's going to join us. As Matt Taylor said, draft coverage as well on Friday. Not sure if we'll be able to get the player on tomorrow, but hopefully sometime next week. Rookie minicamp starts a week from tomorrow, so the player, in all likelihood, will be in Kansas City tonight. I'd assume would fly to Indy, I would guess, early tomorrow morning. Kind of do the whole meet and greet around the Colts complex, meet the media, hopefully come on with John. And then rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow night.
It means we're close to the anniversary of the great back when they used to do before they would fly the guy in and have the press conference basically within immediacy. The conference call on the big speakerphone calling Edgerrin James's house. And, again, I don't know if I said the name of the reporter, but the guy answered, "Hello, Edgerrin? No, this is Dog." "Oh, hello, Mr. Dog. Is Edgerrin there by chance?" That reporter has forever become known as Mr. Dog.
How many people at Kansas City tonight? 900,000?
Come on.
I just wanted to twist the knife.
I was going to say maybe 1 million.
Honestly, I'll bet it's 75. I thought I saw that they were expecting 75,000. And I'm like, okay, which means they'll say 500,000 within a year.
It's at their Union Station, right?
Yep.
Yes. Cool city.
So, again, that will be tonight. We'll recap it all tomorrow. Everybody enjoy draft night. Celtics Hawks at 8:30, the only NBA action